She will do that. Yeah. It's all over this. And here we have our.
That's more money.
How are you?
We expected the garbage. Oh, yeah. It's so
I'm going to take advantage of the quiet and start this meeting 30 seconds early.
Is that even legal?
It is legal. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda is public comment. At this point in time, you're able to make public comment for up to 3 minutes. I'm going to start by having Cassie read the one comment that was mailed to us in advance.
Okay, this comment is from Jed Nielsen. He says, we are aware that Syracuse has a shortage of water. There has been a massive amount of new growth, and yet we have not increased the amount of water storage. Then we are hit with low snowpack and we are in big trouble. The reservoirs are at all-time lows. I would like to see a requirement for all new construction to have limits set on the amount of green space allowed. The HOAs that require grass should be changed. New businesses should also be limited. O'Reilly Auto Parts is an example. We should be requiring a percentage of waterways or desertscape landscaping on all new development. We were thrilled with the possibility to have the city remove the grass from our park strips as an incentive to cut water usage. However, we have called the city several times last year and this year, but we have not been able to add our name to the list. This is a great place to start, especially for us senior citizens. We want to do our part too. We have a great challenge ahead of us, and I hope that we will be able to still have the ability to water twice a week like last year. There were times that we didn't have enough water to run our sprinklers. I am concerned that this will probably be worse this year with the continued growth. I don't feel that once a week will keep things alive and may also encourage water waste on said water day. Pray for rain and lots of it. Thank you, Jed Nelson.
Okay. Is there anyone in house that would like to make a public comment? Go ahead. Please state your name and address first.
Yeah, so name's Grant Thurgood, address is 1054 West Grants Lane,
Okay.
here in Syracuse. So I come to you, I know this is not up for debate right now between the city council, but just for information, just like to share my family's thoughts and considerations with some possible land here in the city. So the Thurgood family heard while attending planning commission meeting, the Ivory Home spokesman from the Ivory Home spokesman that the working with the city was hoping for a land swap next to Lakesy Park for other land. The approximate 5-acre parcel of land is just west of Grants Lane, which was owned by Syracuse City and acquired from the Thurgood family. And joining the special benefit of considerations to extend the David A. and Mary Alta Legacy Park. We feel strongly that it should be developed as Legacy Park, as promised when the city required it. When the Legacy Park was created, one of the problems that was created was the pond didn't have any way for the water to run through it. And so the city decided that they needed to do something so it wouldn't just look like cattails running through there. So the city manager at the time, Mike Moyes, went and talked to the city, and they had a plan developed where they would extend the park. This is the current park right here, and this is the extension of the park. They had this drawing made up, and after they had the drawing made up, they approached my grandma, Elma Thurgood, at the time, who owned this parcel of land right here. This parcel right here came with the park when it was originally purchased. But this part wasn't purchased by the city yet. So the city manager at the time approached my grandmother Elma and said, hey, here's what we're going to do to the park. We're going to extend it. Here's what it's going to look like. And so they said, based upon that information, we're going to put it in the park. We're going to extend this. They went ahead and our family sold the land to the city for the extension of the park. And so when we heard that Ivory was purchasing the rest of the land from the church, we were ecstatic. But then when we started hearing rumors of, and it was told during the planning commission from the Ivory that there was considered a land swap, we were concerned as a Thurgood family that land would be moved out of what it was originally purchased for from our family. So that's our family stance on this land. And we wish that as you consider these possible land swap, that we actually use it for a park and not for more homes.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mo.
Um, alright.
Okay. Hello, my name is Julie Alta Thurgood Johnson. My address is 5196 North Highway 38. I live in Brigham City. However, I spent my childhood at 1054 West Grants Lane. And when I got married, I moved to 1012 Grants Lane. As a baby, I lived in my grandparents' home on 1000 West. I learned to walk there while they were serving an LDS mission in Florida. I grew up all around my cousins and relatives, and I would often go up the road to milk cows at my Uncle Kim's dairy. The dairy is now known as Legacy Park. Technically, the park's name is David A. and Mary Alta Thurgood Legacy Park. My Uncle Ken paid $20,000 for the sign that bears their names and donated part of the land for the park to ensure the use of their names. Mike and I spent countless hours at my Uncle Ken's house trying to talk him into various deals. I could not drive at the time due to a medical condition and had a young son, so my Uncle Ken and I would go for ice cream and drive around Syracuse and reminisce about how it used to be. 20 years ago, the beautiful wide open fields were giving way to houses. The animals and farms turned into people and buildings. When I come to Syracuse now, there is very little that reminds me of my idyllic childhood. So much of it is gone. From my great-grandparents' general store to my grandpa's house that he was born in on 1700, many of the beautiful open spaces and cherished places that I loved as a child are gone. My family has lived in Syracuse for 7 generations. My great-great-grandfather was the first mayor of this town, and many of my relatives have held that position after him. Our family has given a lot to the city through the years. My grandmother, Elma Thurgood, and my uncle Ken Thurgood also wanted to leave a legacy from our family to the city and future generations. My grandmother has been dead for 1.5 years. She lived to be 100 and spent most of her life in Syracuse. Before she died, she thought she had sold and in a way gifted Syracuse City part of my cousins and my inheritance to become an extension of Legacy Park and to benefit the people of this city. She thought the land would end up looking like this rendering, a rendering that we were all given copies of years ago. Now that she is dead, I find the city's timing and proposals unsettling. If my grandmother and uncle had intended for there to be more houses, they could have developed them themselves and used the land in a way that our family wanted. Syracuse does not need more houses. Syracuse needs to honor those that came before them and leave some open spaces. If Syracuse is not going to honor the extension of the park that my grandmother agreed to and in a way gifted, and if you're going to just turn that into more houses, then Syracuse City should give my family an opportunity to buy back our inheritance that was intended to benefit the people of this city. Our family will find a better way to honor my grandmother and all of our ancestors who have given so much to this town. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brett Weaver. I live at 2463 South, 1100 West. My property is right here. So I've purchased my home with the understanding that we would not have homes built behind us. It's the way I grew up, and the plan, and that's the plan I have throughout the rest of my life, is to not have back neighbors. Alma Thurgood, a wonderful woman of integrity, and in fact, all the Thurgoods, very, very high integrity, sold the property with the understanding that this park would be developed. She told us over and over that the park would go right up to my property line. So in all the park and recreation plans that I've looked at for the city, it's always shown that this extension would go up to my property line. So I'm asking the city today to have integrity. The integrity that Alma showed you when she made the deal. You need to honor her integrity. The Thurgoods have been a major part of the city. You can go back and you can look at the name Thurgood. It's very strong throughout the development of Syracuse City. And they've always had strong integrity. And I expect the city council to honor the integrity of Alma Thurgood.
I'm Richard Thurgood. I'm the oldest son of Grant and Elma Thurgood. And I negotiated the deal with Syracuse City through Mike Moyes to buy this property. And when it was purchased, Mom sold it to the city with the guarantee that it would be a city park. And it actually solved a problem for the city. They could circulate the water out of their ponds. So I feel like that we should honor that guarantee or that promise, and it should remain a park. I know it was paid for by park funds. I know it's still in the park master plan. And I think it should remain there, not be sold for homes. Thank you.
I'm Pamela Camp, and we're new to Utah relatively. We weren't born here. We're military. We retired, I don't know, when we moved to Syracuse in 2008, moved to Utah in 1993. We bought the house from Bob and Marie Stella, and Marie Stella worked for the city of Syracuse at the time, and they assured us that the land behind our house at 2468 South, 1100 West was included in the park plot that was planned to be an extension. And at that time, it was supposed to be Chelsea's park that you've moved over to this area, but it was supposed to be for a park. And that's more, this is a lot of history of it was intended, but 2008 is more recent. And there should be people that are still here that were here at 2008 when that was the plan. When Marie, who worked for Syracuse City, told me that when we bought the house. So I think you should honor it. We've already gone through a dispute with the city after we bought the house. This is the second one since we've moved into the house in the neighborhood. And the other one was when they were trying to make us redo all of our drains. And we had to collect money to sue the city to make them honor the agreement or the mandate that they said when the houses were built. They said the houses were supposed to have their downspouts all go into the sewer. So, or the gutter, the gutters at the end. I think that is the sewer, right? Okay. And so then as you've developed and built more houses, you're like, oh crud, we've got a water situation now. So you came to us telling us we had to undo all of our gutters and put in French drains at our expense. And we, as a neighborhood in Parkwood, had to hire lawyers to get Syracuse to honor what they said they were going to do. I hope that won't be the case with this.
Is there anyone else for public comment before I close it? Okay, I'm closing public.
Public comment on what, the housing?
No, just any public comment.
Oh, no.
You have an item on the agenda, Larry, so that'll be coming up. Okay, so I'm closing public comment. The next item is a request from Larry Kerr for a fee waiver for the city council chambers. Larry, if you could, in a couple of minutes, just brief the council on your request.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we can keep going. Mhm. I know what it says. So it's
There was one for Paul.
okay. I'm Larry Kerr. I represent the Utah Cold War Veterans Foundation that presents this beautiful medal from the state of Utah. It's a real medal. It's not plastic. Many of you have already received the medal and the certificate at no charge. The state approved this medal back in 2017, 16, 17, at a large ceremony at the Capitol building and presented 100 of these medals to the servicemen in the area. After that, the funding dropped, the publicity dropped. Sherry and I started it again late 2017. We've been doing these ceremonies from Salina, Delta, all the way up down Wasatch, Linden, West Valley, Jordan. We go to senior centers. We go to a veterans home. We went to George E. Wayland twice. And here this past year, we've been doing a ceremony darn near every week somewhere. 2 in Salt Lake City. We're having the second one in Hooper. We've done 2 in Roy. Thursday, we go to the Golden Hour Senior Center in Ogden. We come back and go to Hooper, and after that, we go back to Roy. So 1 ceremony a week. We've been averaging over 500 medals during the COVID year alone. We did over 500 medals. There's never a charge for this medal or certificate or the ceremony to any veteran or their family. We give the medal, we present the medal, I'm sorry, to World War II veterans when we find them all the way up to 1991. That is the eligibility status. We have a lot of support from the Honor Guard, the Patriot Guard Riders, the Marine Guard Riders, the DAR, the Battling Betties, and most of all, the local mayors. Mike Caldwell, for instance, in Ogden is in Thursday. Mayor Robert Dandoy, Roy, we've done theirs twice, we'll do more. Our problem is we are a nonprofit and somebody has to pay for the medal, which is $15. The medal is imported in South Salt Lake. When we get enough donations, we go up, buy as many medals as we can. We got a family that buys the certs and the programs, gets everything made. We established a committee of blue shirts, which you'll see here as our committee. We do have a board of directors. We have a constitution, bylaws, things like that. We are in the process again of establishing a 501(c) nonprofit for tax purposes. We're in the process of reapplying for the business license and all the other paperwork. That should be done within a month or so. But we don't stop doing the ceremonies just because we don't have that paperwork. We do have our constitution bylaws. I am on the board of directors as the co-chairman, and that's for the whole state of Utah. So we're very shorthanded. I get calls from Price and St. George and everywhere, and we're doing the best we can. The last 3 years, we obtained the city hall to do these ceremonies. This city hall is the best facility we've seen. Not only because of the theater seating where people can look over top and see the actual ceremonies. You have wide aisles for people with handicapped, wheelchairs and walkers, et cetera, et cetera. You have a great sound system in there. And the building's always nice and warm for us. We have volunteers that bring in bottled water and things like that, help us set up some of the tables from across the street to the senior center. We started the first ceremony in Syracuse over at the senior center, and we had to rent 2 rooms. By the time everybody showed up, we had to rent the 3rd room. We had that many veterans turn out. Syracuse has a ton of veterans, a ton of them. And we was able to do a lot of veterans from Syracuse in those first couple of ceremonies. And then in 2000, the COVID hit. But my point is we was allowed to use the last 3 years at no cost, which helps us greatly. And the location of this one helps us serve Sunset and Clinton and other areas. But we have a ton of veterans from this areas. And we go all the way back to Blaine Gailey, World War II. And as Rex Thurgan then knows, my wife is Cherie Cook, the Cooks and Thurgans, and they're all related. Hooper right now, we've been doing Hooper. There's over 200 veterans live over there. We've already did over 100 and we're doing more. So I passed out a flyer to everybody. My phone number's on it, I hope, and that is the medal and cert. And I would beg the city council to vote in our favor to allow us continued use of this city hall for this ceremony, at least 3 times a year if you can.
Okay, thank you. This is not a voting session, so there won't be a vote taken tonight. This is a work session. Does anybody have any more questions for Larry?
Where are you getting your donations for the medals?
Early on in Syracuse, there's a well-known gentleman here in Syracuse that donated $1,500 the first time. And he really doesn't want me to divulge his name, but most of the donations come from a veteran that'll pay it forward for another ceremony and so on. And it's really been not a lot of money, but we keep going. And we do have a veteran that serves on the Patriot Guard. He's a ride captain. And him and his family's donated $2,500 for next shipment medals that we get. Now that shipment hasn't came yet, but we count on donations like that from small businesses, families, veterans paying it forward, and we're getting it done.
Very cool.
Okay, this will be, because it is a fee waiver, it has to have a public hearing, so it will be on the next agenda. Moving on to the next item.
Thank you.
Have just a moment. No, sir, I'm sorry. Okay, this is our point of order. So discussion regarding solid waste services request for proposal.
Can we be excused?
Yes, you're,
Can I get one of your, some of your information? My dad received a medal, that was Georgie Warland, and he got Warland, he died last month. It meant a great deal. to him.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
we'd like to review the waste response to our RFP. Go ahead, Steve.
There you go. All right, at the request of the council, we sent out the bid for our garbage hauling service. We received 2 bids back, one from Robinson Waste, one from Ace Disposal. There is a summary sheet that I believe you guys have all reviewed in the packet itself. At this point, it's discussion only. Basically, if you have questions for me, if there's anything unclear, we can answer those questions. So I guess I'll turn it back to you, man.
Any questions from the council?
Seems pretty straightforward, and we got 2 bids, and the other was much more competitive, and we appreciate you guys doing the work. And yes,
The one thing I always wanted some clarity on, so one of them has a no fuel surcharge. The other has a 25% over negotiated base per gallon. If diesel price exceed that base, prior it was $4 per gallon. We are over $4 per gallon. So does that change the bid?
Potentially, yes. There will be a fuel surcharge. Strangely enough, February was the last week of February was the last time it was below $4. So we haven't seen that surcharge yet. But it is 25% over and above the $4. So we're not paying on his whole fuel bill. It's just in excess of. And I don't, he's the Robinson Waste, Steve is here if you want to ask him questions specifically on how that would work.
I guess what I know that, I don't know how many miles you drive per day and what your mileage of your trucks are. But I guess, do we have an estimate of what that would add on average? I guess it's hard to pull it out of your head, but
I don't currently. I'd have to look
Would be
at
less than
that.
120,000.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot less. I believe when we hit this
over
back
a year.
in like 8 or 10 years ago, it was 10 to 20,000 roughly. It's, like I say, it's hard to figure. I don't know if Steve, I don't know if you want to have Steve comment on that as well from Robinson Services, but
Do you have that information, Mr. Robinson?
So if it depends on where the base is set, like the $4 range, it's hardly nothing based on the current agreement. Based on the new agreement, kind of is what we did is we took because of the price of fuel goes up and down, so much is so variable. Now putting a bid out there that includes the fuel surcharge like the competition did, odds are the price is going to go down. And so we prefer to use, we did a 10-year look back on the price of fuel and use the average of that. And that's what we recommend using as a baseline. If we use that, it'll add approximately 19 cents per first can use. Over a year, it'd be about $27,000.
That was a claim or no.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions?
what's the term again of this?
typically we've done 5-year terms. It's all negotiable on what the council wants to do.
5-year with renewal clauses.
options, yeah. So the last time we did it was 2014, it was a 5-year, we did a 2-year and then I believe a 1-year extension to get us to this point.
So we can suggest a 5-year at this point again.
I think that's pretty standard. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, if no further questions. This will be on the next agenda for awarding of the contract. Item E, discussion regarding secondary water supply, season beginning and end dates, and conservation efforts. We'll bring Robert forward, our Public Works Director. A lot of information come out in the last month regarding this, and we're probably going to extend this conversation because there are some tough decisions ahead of us. Robert.
Yeah, so a good thing is you don't have to make decisions tonight.
No,
Tonight's
they're
a
not
deci-
tonight.
Tonight's not a decision making, but just give you information, and we will need to bring it forward again for a business meeting to make a decision with a resolution. So, but I'd like to just have a discussion together with you to give you facts that I know and you're probably already aware of if you've read the packet. So we are still in a drought, and it's hard to understand that probably for a lot of folks, where we've seen some good precipitation this year, and our soil moisture is better this year than it was last year. But our reservoir is Echo is about 39 or 40% full right now. Last year was about that same level. So East Canyon is a little lower right now, but we are going to have, you know, a lot of it is what's going to happen in the next few weeks, right?
When the
And that
runoff
could change.
starts.
So this week, we're going to see some higher temperatures, and we'll start seeing rivers kind of help fill
Was
those
that
reservoirs.
comparison you put in the packet for a point in time comparison?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
March 15th.
And
To
the
March
same date.
15th.
So
Yeah.
do you have any idea what contributes to that 10% decrease we're seeing in East Canyon?
Well, we started off lower.
I think, yeah,
The
Yeah.
dry, probably
Yeah.
that dry.
We were,
So-
we were
East was drained more than ever this last year. I think it's not been that dry since it was filled. So
Right.
that's.
We
that's
actually
the
saw
difficult,
the
Yeah.
old dam for
Yeah.
East Canyon, which hasn't ever been exposed from, I don't know if it's never, but
So by starting
But-
further behind, I think that explains that.
Okay.
so we, our two suppliers, Weber Basin and Davis Weaver. So Weber Basin has put out a notice saying that they are expecting cuts of 60% for the water they would deliver to us for our secondary water. And then 40% reduction for agriculture farmers. And then
So that's, I was wondering about that. What is that? What will that
those
be?
those are crops and pastures.
What did
But
they
I
do
mean,
last
like,
year?
what will, how will they cut 40%?
Yeah, they'll
Oh,
just deliver less. You'll
40%
have an
less.
allotment that you pay for, and you pay for the full
Timeframe.
100%, and then they just,
you
Cut
shorten
out,
your
okay.
time.
it's 0.6, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
so if I have like an
Yeah.
hour and 15 minutes, which is normal, it'll go down to like 18 minutes.
Mhm.
At this point, that's about what I'm looking at, and my water won't even get to me.
It
It's
is gonna be
bad.
hard, it'll be
It's
hard on
bad.
everyone. And then on top of that, they are,
To the point
Talking about
neighbors
doing
stack up their
culinary
time
cuts, too.
on top of each other,
So
so
our-
it pushes it.
yeah, our indoor watering, they're cutting 10%.
They didn't cut anything last year.
No.
They didn't cut
No.
anything last
No
year.
culinary.
So, yeah, and I'll save the culinary for our next agenda item is culinary, so I'll get into that. But this one, I want to talk about irrigation. So it is still a drought condition for us. All of the water volumes in the reservoirs, East Canyon, Echo that deliver to us, and then Willard Bay doesn't deliver directly to us, but indirectly helps the whole watershed. Willard Bay will they're talking about pumping down to a mud puddle this
Yeah.
year. And then,
The county announced that
So-
to us and said that the Willard Bay will be pumped down to 0 this year,
That's.
which I've never seen in my lifetime.
yeah.
They're gonna find all kinds of stuff under there.
Dead bodies.
I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, no.
I was thinking the
I was
same thing.
thinking sunk boats.
Well,
I mean,
Man, you
I
guys are
went-
dark.
I'm sorry.
We watched those
Watch
shows.
Yeah, so I do
The
think
Dateline
that
episode.
I do
Right.
think that we need to emphasize that for starters, these suggestions come from the governor's office. So it's not like starting with just our water supplier. It is starting ahead of that. And we do have some options because we get delivered to us. And I think Robert's about to go into this. We get delivered to us whatever our percentage is, and then we can manage that from there. So it's not like we have to manage it the exact prescribed way, but we still have the limitation overall. And that's kind of one of the points of discussion.
So last year, our combined reduction between both of our water suppliers was about 46%. We used the entire allotment of that water through the whole year. And if you remember, I came every city council meeting, every planning commission meeting, and showed how the water was received and spent.
So this is 6% less than that.
Mhm.
14%.
That was,
Well, we used 46 and this time we're only getting 60.
no,
So
that was a
6% less.
46% reduction.
Now we're getting
So
a
we would have had
60%
54%.
So it's 14.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, and then if you wanted to reference back to the last year's, I just gave the date, it was September 20th. You can look at the packet to get a summary of how that ran, okay? But one of the things so I expect this year to be very similar as far as the amount of water we'll get. Weber Basin, we don't have, most of our water is Davis Weber. They have priority rights over Weber Basin. So Davis Weber, I don't know the amount of reduction yet there, but there will be a reduction there. I would anticipate it being around 25 to 40%, somewhere in that range for Davis Weber. But where we have more of that, and less Weber Basin, the combined rate won't be 60% total for us. I guess it might be around 50%, about half the water again. So probably about the same amount of water as we had last year. Now, the one thing was really successful for Syracuse is how we managed it with the watering days. Shortening the water season was one. And then the watering days, we did 2 days a week and we had some blackout days. And then we did water enforcement. So those components really helped us make it through the watering season last year. So I'm coming to talk about what you would like to do for this season. Davis and Weber and Roy Water are both advertising 1 day a week watering until Memorial Day. And then from Memorial Day to Labor Day, you can go 2 days a week, and then Labor Day to the end of the season, 1 day a week.
So I think, and I actually talked to Mayor about this. This was, your grass can survive. We have drought resistant grass, and grass can survive off of being watered once a week. I mean, our farmers water their crops once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, depending on the crop. And they just have to learn how to do it correctly to make sure their grass still stays alive. And we have plenty of citizens that, goodness, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that are happy to teach classes. So if you want to learn how to keep your grass alive off of that one water session every week that you water, then come and learn. There's ways to do it. You just have to be educated on it. And I don't think the education for people to do that is readily available. So I think they're just not having good luck with it, trying to do the best that they can, but it's without the knowledge available from someone who's educated in that field to say, this is how you do it correctly, and I promise it's gonna work, you know? If we offer that to our citizens and find someone who can provide that class to teach them, I think that would be better received. That we're not just saying, you can't do this. We're giving you an option and an educated way to do it.
So I think that we would need to do that
Yeah.
early because we have the whole season. And I think that that's a good idea, but keep in mind that they're gonna, so first, we pushed our season back and they saw the wisdom. So I think kudos to this council for doing that, because now they're gonna do it with everybody. But we're gonna need to get it done before that opening day.
Yeah.
So that people know how to respond to that. And I think that's a very good point, and we should try to figure that out.
And I feel like that's something we should record. That way, if people can't make it, then we can put it up online
Good,
and readily
online.
available to Google it. And they're like, this is how we can help you with this.
So there's
If
a
you need any
couple,
extra questions, we can answer them for you.
yeah, there's a couple of really great resources for that. Weaver Basin actively does conservation garden with classes and tours. And then in the past, they've done fairs twice a year. Over the COVID, they didn't have the fairs, but I imagine they'll start those up again.
Can we
but-
invite someone out there?
But
But,
absolutely, yeah. And then the other resource is Utah State University has a Center for Water Efficient Landscape. That since 2018, they've been doing monthly webinars about efficient water landscapes. And we could link in
Yeah, let's
on
get
our
it on our
website.
website.
We could link that into our website. People can actually get on there and watch the webinars.
It's definitely doable. I converted my neighbor last year. He only waters once a week now. And he's like, tells me all the time how great, much better his grass looks. And it's actually way more healthy for your grass to only water once a week. But people are misguided and they have a lot of misconceptions about how their drought resistant lawn works. And if we can clarify that for them and get them the education for it and the tools that they need for it, I think it would be a lot easier on our water.
Well, I love that idea. I do want Robert to comment on one other aspect of this, and that is our system. How does it respond? Because if we have citizens watering for longer times but less days, are we set up to handle that well? I mean, there's always been the issue of the reason we have blackout days is because the reservoirs have to recover. And so the question would be what Jennifer's suggesting, how does that play into the way our system's designed?
Is that water direction?
To do 1 day a week.
If they were to do 1 day a week, would it help or hurt the way our reservoirs and system reacts, or does it not matter?
That would, I mean, the fewer days a week, the easier it is on the system. I wouldn't suggest extended longer watering times because we have clay soils at a point that clay will just absorb the water and then just run off and then become waste.
I like the 1-2-1. I think we can work on educating people. Let's make that education available. Let's get those seminars out there and hopefully we can push people to that, but let's not make it and let's not enforce it this year. Let's spend this year on education and do the 1-2-1. We're already, sounds like we're doing the late start already.
What's the 1-2-1? Sorry. I'm
1
not
day,
sure.
then 2 days.
1 day
And then
up
2
to
days during
Memorial
the
Day,
Yeah.
2 days until Labor Day,
Okay.
and then
back to
1
1
day
day.
back to 1 day. So we do the 1-2-1. I would like again to try and push people to smart controllers because they're way better at watering your lawn than
It's
you
actually
are.
2 items down on the agenda.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about all the
things.
the
the
water
changes.
Yeah, we'll get into
All the
the
changes.
landscape
That's a lot of
stuff.
them.
Oh, well, no, I mean,
But
but
more on
let's,
the information.
I think we need a site on our page with the webinars, with the Flip the Strip program,
Mhm.
both ours and hopefully Weaver
Basin.
Basin, and the link to the WaterWise conservant, the whole
water efficient landscape.
water efficient landscape. No, the one that has the rebate for the smart controllers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Like a whole new page for the webpage, like
Or just an
Click the link
informational
in it,
page that
yeah.
says, hey, say,
this is all the stuff.
yeah,
We can put it under our secondary water.
I think we need a
So-
link on the main page.
I
that
do.
Takes it to the.
I think we
second
need,
page.
Yeah.
because everyone's looking for instruction. The big complaint we had last year was people didn't know what was going on, especially if we're doing a
hard to find
1-2-1.
stuff.
The
on there.
main page is the crucial spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
That's
It looks like a big
most
arrow that
pressing
says
for all of
water
us right now.
information
Yeah.
here.
Yes, and let's get all of those resources because there's a lot of money you can save while doing water smart things that people just don't know about. I don't know how many people know they can get a smart controller for half off.
And that's just it, like, it's, everything isn't readily accessible, like you said. So if it was all in one spot and someone that we could answer questions and things like that, that would make it a lot, people wouldn't be so mad. They'd still be kind of mad, I get it, but they wouldn't be so mad, which was the goal.
Yes.
So on
Sorry, carry on.
the water enforcement, that is the one thing that we did notice that's
at the time we started doing enforcement was when the tank levels finally got to where they were working.
Yeah, I remember you came.
And so enforcement really was a key part, not something I want to or like to or have to do, but it is something that was necessary in order to help all of us together, work together. And the majority of notices that went out, there were like 1,145 notices that went out, that it was a no fine, it was just informational only.
They were
And
educational.
it worked.
Yeah, I think you ended up
There were
with
very few fines.
very few actual fines.
That
And I
started
think
a lot
we're
of
that much
conversations.
further ahead this year because we had last year as a.
I think so
precursor.
too. Yeah. So if we do the same quadrant with blackout dates and just make it the same as last year, you know, I think that would be a good start. The other thing I need to know is a begin and end date. Now, I brought Neil Briggs here. He is the president of West Branch Irrigation Company. We get our water conveyed through his pipeline to our reservoir. So, and this year we won't be using the other irrigation company is Clearfield Irrigation. This year we won't be using their pipeline at all, but just West Branch. So, and Neil is also a farmer here in Syracuse, owns several acres that he himself irrigates. and
That's
takes
an
care of too.
underestimation. Mr. Neil
So-
Briggs has the best grass hay in probably all of Utah. So, and he has a waiting list to get on his list to get by his grass hay.
Neil does a really, really great job, and I brought him here. So if you want to have him speak about, on behalf of the farmers and that, I think that's a good thing to know, how the farmers are affected and how that'll work. We work together very well, don't we, Neil? We have to because we're on the same delivery gate off of the main channel. So we work together as far as what dates work for starting and ending of the season. This year, I know Davis Weaver was going to start putting water in the canal. They said they could go early for the farmers, depending on what the farmers want, or they could go later up till May 1st. And then Davis Weaver is going to pressurize their system like May 2nd. And then Weaver Basin was saying mid-May sometime. So we thought as far as our system, we could go May 11th to May 15th kind of time frame to start up. And then end date, I mean, we don't really know, but we could go again mid-September, or if you wanted to go October 1st.
Remind us of
Davis
last year's
Weaver
date.
was saying October 1st or sooner if the water runs out. That's,
Were we like September 20th?
we did September 20th last
20th.
year. Worked
And
really
started-
great. We started May 1st.
May 1st to September.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to, first of all, thank you, Mr. Briggs, for coming. That is greatly appreciated. As the local water celebrity, we'll take any words of wisdom you have.
Well, I'm not the water celebrity.
No, but really, any advice that you can share with us, we know that you've been doing this a long time.
The water celebrity is the heavens above us.
Okay, I'm going to agree.
So anyway, Ryan Mills asked me if I would come to give our perspective on what this year we would like to see. Of course, it's still undetermined. And I told Ryan, I said, last year I watered all my first crop hay, which I almost never do.
Can we get you to come forward?
Yes.
Because we've got to hear you for the
Okay.
recording.
Okay. Last year was kind of a strange year. I never watered my first crop hay, but I started in April and I had it all watered by, say, the 10th of May. And that made my crop. Otherwise, I had a few fields that I didn't water, didn't get much of a first crop. And so I told Ryan that if we have another replay of last year, I'd want to water first thing, which this year, Davis Weaver Canal isn't going to put water in the canal until the 1st of May. And so,
Does that wipe out your first crop?
no, I would be able to probably water in that first week of May. And because I don't want any water on my hay after, say, the 10th, because I want the ground to dry out so I can cut hay on dry ground. So
It's like the last week of May.
So, yeah, we cut towards the end of May. So
with the start date of, say, the 13th to the 15th, that's what he told me on secondary. This city's not going to need water in that time frame. And I said, I may not need it either. And so we'll just keep it in the river. And Davis Weaver Canal has told us that they expect a stream flow, if you want to call it natural flow. They expect that this year, where last year we did not have natural flow. And so they could, in essence, they told us, start our stream at 0.028. That's a normal stream. Last year we were 0.011 for the whole season. Then they cut us below that when they saw that our flows were less. So they told us that they expect 0.018 this year. That's up quite a bit from last year, but again, that could be dropped depending on what happens between now and then and happens throughout the summer. So from a farmer standpoint, I may need the water, but I may not. And if we don't, we'll just leave it in the river and maybe fill Willard Bay. Willard Bay a year ago was 69% on this date. Right now it's at 39%. So
that's scary.
yes. And East Canyon was 58%. Now it's down.
I think it's 59 right now. Last year was 69.
Last year was 69. So it looks like more of a bleak year due to those reservoir levels. And plus last year, Willard Bay was pumped into the Davis Weaver Canal all summer long. And I asked, well, did the canal have to pay for those pumping costs? They said, no, Weaver Basin paid for those pumping costs. So that was good in our.
That helped Echo. That made it so Echo didn't drain.
Because even though Davis Weaver Canal owned water in Echo that we could rightfully use, Weaver Basin said, we're going to save that drinking water in Echo because Willard is not a drinking water source.
Yeah.
And they pumped it in our canal, not at our cost, but they paid for the cost of that pumping. And so, and they've done work on dredging that canal that goes to pump. So they're prepared to, like you say, drain Willard Bay down to nothing.
Yeah.
Which.
So I'm going to just share, Brody and I went to a breakfast with the commissioners that they asked us to talk about some of the upcoming events, and the county commissioners and Commissioner Elliott, just so that we validate the source here, said, tell your farmers they're not going to get that 3 crops this year. Now, I don't know how valid that is. Sorry, let me turn that off. I don't know if that's valid or not, but that's a scary thought to me that you would lose one of your cuts this year. Do you feel like that's going to happen or possible, or?
Just from what I heard at the meeting last Friday with Davis Weaver Canal, it doesn't seem like that's going to play out that way in our neck of the woods. Now, Hooper, that's a different situation because they have different water rights and things. But we're really in a good situation. Davis Weaver Canal owns the lower, is it 40% of Echo?
Yeah. So they have the senior rights.
So we have the senior rights, and we even have a more senior right than Weaver Basin, and they don't like that.
They don't like it, yeah.
But we like being partners with them because where they pumped last year and paid for that cost, we'd like to say that Weaver Basin has an endless money supply, or they're a government entity.
The fact of the matter is, we're all in the same watershed. So, you know, whether it's drinking water or outdoor water, drinking water for sure is vital. But we need to work together. And I think getting the same message out there is important too. So it's not confusing to the public, even outside Syracuse. If we can get this, the same kind of message, it helps. The momentum helps each other. So if Neil ends up taking water, say the beginning part of May, then all the water could go to him, and then we could start just that week after if you wanted to go something like that. As far
That
as
is
season.
pressurized out really well too.
Yeah, in West Branch, Ryan was really good to work with last year, where I needed a stream to push across, and of course, on alfalfa, I only water like 3 times a year. And on the weeks that I'm not using my water, it all goes to your ponds. Well, he scratched my back and he said, you take both the Holt ditch and the Thurgood ditch, which is what you have flowing to Jensen. And that allowed me to water, get the push to get my field watered. And it just worked great. And then on the weeks that I didn't use it, you benefited. So it's been a good relationship, and we try and work together to conserve and use every drop and just not waste. And so we appreciate that. Thank you. We as farmers feel like we're the best at conserving resources. We like to call ourselves the best environmentalists on the planet. So that's what we're going to do this year and every year. So I don't know if there's any other comments or things.
That's good information. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. But anyway, like 13th to 15th, that's secondary on time, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, I like that plan.
You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about 2 weeks later than last year,
More
but
reasonable.
there's less water than
It'll be
last year.
okay. Yeah.
And then
we'll put together an ordinance that, or a resolution that
Like
we'll
next
bring to the
time.
next meeting.
Do you have a preference for an end date?
I
When
think
did we, so September 20th was there anything particular about why we settled on September 20th?
that was when they shut off the water.
Actually, we decided it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can't
And then
remember why we-
everyone followed suit. We were basing was going to shut off like September 15th. And then I called them up, said our council was going to go till the 20th. So they.
And then we got
said
those
it
big
because our
rainstorms that
council
didn't even need the water.
Yeah, so
But it worked
We
out.
were dictating for the whole county.
It worked out. So I think if you wanted to go the
Yeah, a lot of
20th
them
again,
did
we'll
shut
be
off on
fine,
the
or
15th.
try for
Yeah,
whatever.
I think that works.
Yeah.
I think 15th is easier to
Yeah.
remember for everybody.
15th to
15th and 15th.
And that's okay too,
Yeah.
whatever.
Let's do that.
Okay, to September.
If it's 90 degrees in the middle of September, that's a hard shut off day.
Yeah, that's my one concern is usually it's still hot in September, and you'd hate to work all year long to try and preserve your lawn just to kill it in the last 3 weeks.
Well,
We didn't have an issue with the 20th of September last year, I think.
yeah,
Mhm.
5 days is not a big deal to
Yeah.
to cut off earlier than that, right? I mean,
It's not.
just for the
last year we
sake
got
of the
like
message
two-
and the.
So
What was it,
20th.
2 rainstorms that made everybody's grass
Yeah.
green there at the end
Yep, at
anyway.
the very, yeah.
I got
Neil,
that,
does
I
that
got the runoff
affect,
of
does
that.
that affect you, whether it's September 15th or
Nope.
20th?
No,
Okay.
that's good for me.
All right. And then, what's your thoughts on keeping the geographical areas with the pick 2 days out of the
That was
5 that
great.
are available?
Keeping the
Okay.
same thing, I think, makes it easier for people to remember.
Mhm.
Sorry, while I'll let you go through it, but no.
I think the big educational piece we did last year makes sense to keep it as simple
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
uniform as possible.
And then we'll put out as much information as we can in the magazine and Facebook and website. We'll probably get some news attention too, like we did last year. So is that all,
Get your-
that's all good for
Get your
you?
media face on, Robert. You did great.
I
You
was never
represented
planning
well.
on any of that, but it happened.
Just wing it.
And then, well, here's a little plug. That webinar I mentioned, I am doing a webinar, one of the webinars. They actually called me up and invited me to do one for them.
Would
So
we
We have a
release
local
it?
celebrity.
Heck yeah.
so
Are we recording that and putting it on?
it will be
Website?
recorded.
Let's
Yeah,
do. We'll link that on our website.
That looks more.
yeah.
Local.
I'm just gonna be talking about what we did last year. They asked if we would. And then water enforcement, we're good with
Mhm.
keeping that the same.
So-
Okay.
Yeah,
And
with-
With the
then,
ones we did at the end, where we had actually increased the.
So what
penalty.
happens if somebody's like a repeat offender from last year? Do we carry those over? Is that documented anywhere? If somebody just starts off last year?
we would start
They get a
fresh,
clean slate.
just clean slate.
I'm with you on this. I'm with you on
I mean,
this.
you can decide.
I
but that's
support
how
this
would
where this is
suggest.
going.
I mean, if you guys don't have it, you know, it's not readily trackable and that's a challenge to kind of follow through. I just think if they're
could if you
constantly
wanted
breaking
to.
the rules, what's the?
I think a lot of
No
times you'll
repercussions.
probably get people to say, oh, I had to reset my clock. I didn't realize it's
Okay.
new,
All right.
you know.
Okay, but I can only buy the first excuse.
That's what we always do.
And after
There's
that, I
one
can't buy
warning.
any more of them.
There's one warning.
I mean,
Okay,
the,
all right.
the
Show
intention
grace
is to
first,
get the
always.
word out to say,
Only the
this is what we're doing this year, right? So
There is
that's
the
kind of the-
cynical approach that, you know, you're gonna go till you get caught and then obey the law.
So,
Those people don't put their shopping carts.
so what is new from last year is the 1-2-1.
Yeah.
And so we'll need to we'll need to make that very clear and we need to,
Times or.
specify.
No, you're good.
Yeah, thank you, Neil.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
You're the man.
Thanks for all the work you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and chatting with us.
Tuesday nights and every other night. Anyway.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So what do we just do?
I'm still
So
on his
right now we
wait list.
have the 2 days. Do you just want to pick a day, divide it up however you see fit for the 1 days? Are we just gonna?
For Will,
If you
I
keep it the
know
same.
Roy Water and Davis, we were doing Memorial Day to Labor Day. I think to keep the message the same.
I think you're.
Yeah.
No.
Is that what you mean?
What I mean is
Oh.
which day that they water
Oh, the
on.
day of the
Because
week.
if you say, here's the 2 days you can water, pick one of those,
How do you ever know?
that's never gonna work. So you need to say, look,
So when they go to the
Well,
one,
we already
then we
go
should
with,
just have where it is in the city that you can water in that day.
so we already give more
Gone
days
to
than you
over.
can water.
Yeah, which makes it
Last
hard
year,
to
didn't you
enforce.
say
Right, it is
choose
harder
any
to
of these
enforce.
days?
Yeah.
okay.
I
Choose
think
2
giving
days.
them a choice
Yeah.
works better. They may have an event in their yard,
Sure,
or they may
okay.
have a certain mowing schedule or something. And if everyone had to water on the same day, that would be a bigger strain on the system than
Oh, okay, so
allowing
giving them
them to
options,
choose, right?
All right.
Hey, real quick, so the feedback we're getting and we're gonna get is around our parks. I think we're gonna get that a lot.
Yeah,
Is the September 15th gonna cause any issues with,
Rick?
rec?
Well, I think that we talked about it. We just, throwing myself and Chad's net. We're kind of planning on that. as of right now.
Planning on
Make sure
complaints or
that's-
planning
the
on?
Same thing we did last year.
Yes.
Same thing, kind of what we did last year, but.
But I
we're
mean, even
gonna go
earlier,
out
it's
again
not
once
gonna,
we have everything, because if we need to adjust things, we will. But we'll have to watch and see how it's, can be with our trip.
How many parks do we have that don't have smart controllers yet?
Most of our major parks have them, and if they don't, they're getting them this year and in the next year budget. So we just have a couple, like ones that are not, like your North Canterbury.
Those controllers, because there's so many more settings, those controllers
I
aren't
just
like
got a smart
residential.
controller.
Yeah, I
So-
know. They're,
Our major parks, yeah. we
Fancy.
upgraded
Those aren't
two more,
cheap.
so.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So no issues with
Do we
I
qualify
think
for the
I know,
rebates?
unless you have anything more, I think I've got enough, unless you want to add more.
I
Now
think
we're
we're
going
gonna have
on
some
to
of that.
culinary. Is that our
I
next?
had a question, but I can't remember right now. So I might come back to this item.
You should write those down.
I really should.
okay, so let's move on to culinary for the time being.
Oh, I thought of it.
There we go.
So during the public comment, someone made a comment they couldn't sign up for Flip the Strip. Is that closed?
Our backlog is very, very high.
I'm on the
So
backlog.
we have
We're all on the
far
list.
more than we can do in this whole next year. So putting them on the list, it might be like 2 or 3 years out.
Okay.
So I mean, if we had a crew that was just designated to that's all they do, then we would be able to catch up, keep up with it, but.
Yeah.
it's not
Designated
a-
crew, every department around just went, oh, no.
And I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that's why there's a backlog. So.
Okay.
So I have a totally different question. I received an email from somebody asking, she wants to plant a garden this year. And she said, but I saw on the Weaver thing that said once a week to water. What do we think about spot watering a garden?
Gardens there's an exception.
So last year, we said you could spot water as long as if you're hose watering, you need to be attentive. You need to be like there.
So-
Don't just leave it and leave.
You have to
That's
babysit.
basically what I
Everybody
told her to
pays a
focus
certain
on.
amount for culinary water. That's like a certain amount of gallons a month. And if they don't ever hit that, I always suggest that they just, if they're spot watering, just get a little pitcher and use the culinary spigot that's on all year long on the house, because that comes out of metered water. So then they won't go over or anything like that. So if they're just watering their garden, they should use that little spigot.
Well, soon they'll be metering
That
second.
could bring up
Yeah.
something else.
Well, I mean,
So,
but that's,
But
but
yeah.
you
Because
can't right
you're
now if they're
saying-
using
It
secondary
makes
water.
them more
They're already
careful. It
paying
makes
for
them
that
more careful, for
amount.
sure.
It does make them more careful. It makes me way more careful.
And now a quick
That's what I
question
water
to
my horses
Robert.
with.
You know, we were talking to one of the council members from Clearfield. They don't
It
have
is.
secondary water and they
I thought
didn't
it
give
was.
any fines or
Okay.
restrictions on their water sources
all right,
last
that's what I
year.
thought.
Some of
but I
Layton
checked
doesn't
to
have
make
it.
sure.
What do we,
Okay.
what's
Okay.
the Weaver Basin and Chamber and, or not Chamber, sorry, the commission, what are their thoughts about some cities that are not necessarily doing as much for, about the problem as we are? Because if we're talking about cutting 10% of culinary here,
Well,
what
that's-
about the place that's using culinary for
As
everything?
irrigation.
I'm just
Everyone
wondering
is
what-
cutting
So,
10%.
Well, Clearfield, like, it does not have secondary. They water with
Yeah.
culinary.
Yeah,
that's
some of
what I'm
Layton
saying.
does too.
So-
Right.
So.
Right,
so
and they're
we
paying.
And they
have
pay
a
for that.
balance
Weaver
on
Basin, so for those cities that Weaver Basin delivered to that doesn't have a secondary system, it's, they are going to experience, it'll be more than, I think it's a 40% combined reduction for them. Because it's culinary and secondary, so they'll take a bigger hit on their culinary for a reduction.
Okay.
And they'll pay a lot more for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
wondered, because if I thought they're only getting 10%, that just affects their
No,
outdoors.
they'll
but
take
it'll
a
affect
bigger
our
hit. It's
indoors.
not gonna be 10%
Okay,
reduction for them.
thank you.
so I was asked at this breakfast we went to, I was asked to start letting people know that to plan for low water plantings in your garden this year. And I know that doesn't,
What does
go
that
well with well, that's a good question. All right, I'm not saying I have that answer. I'm just saying, I did put that message out there, that was what I was being asked to share, was that we're being asked to plan for low water plantings in your garden. I
Or
don't know for
more
sure what that,
mulch on the bottom.
I plant tomatoes and squash. Are those
Solves your problem.
are they?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm awesome.
I'm
People
not a
don't put
gardener,
enough
so I don't
mulch
have all the
underneath their
answers. I'm
soil.
just pushing out the information that I was given, so.
So again, this is where we need to.
Yeah, we
put
need
this on
to-
the-
And that's why I'm bringing it up. Maybe
Training,
one of you are
education.
a garden expert, and I
I-
welcome that to.
I own a
Are you
garden.
a gardener?
Oh,
but
God, no. I can barely keep
I have a
flowers
brown thumb.
alive.
Disappointed, Jen. I thought we needed.
No way. No green thumb here.
I guess half,
Farm
well,
life.
we can work on that.
You ready for culinary?
Well,
Yeah.
and so the question is, with this regard, people are asking, what do they do with their gardens? Do we have a resource for that? Or do we have any resource to help
Pay for
them
a certain amount of
understand what
culinary
are
water.
lower water, or what if people say, I don't care, I need watermelon? I'm assuming that's a higher water plant, but
So.
isn't that why you call it watermelon?
Oh, my
Sounds like-
goodness.
Am I right or wrong? You're maybe a better
I mean,
gardener than I am.
Yeah, I could talk about what you plant in Hooper and the sandy soils, which obviously.
And our soil's
Yeah.
different, vastly different. even
Different,
with
but
short
there are
distance.
watering guides like through the Utah State University Extension that give you guidance on the best plants for your area. They have like all these different little zones set up. And they tell you which garden plants are the best.
That's usually
But that's
for
with the-
temperate.
But that's with local soil. A lot of these gardens are raised beds that have
Right.
bagged soil and stuff. I'm telling you, they just need more mulch on the
So
soil.
I guess before we deviate from this, since we are still on.
Yeah,
secondary. Secondary. How do we go about putting this website together? Are we just gonna assign someone and say, this is what you're doing for the next day?
We have a lot of information to get out there, and that's why
I
we're
see.
having this discussion as quickly as we could.
All right,
Probably Elizabeth.
I'm gonna move on to culinary. You guys?
Yes,
All right.
here we go.
Okay, so with the 10% reduction in our culinary water delivery, the last year and the year before, we used 100% of our contracted allotment from Weaver Basin for our drinking water, 100% completely. And if we do that, if we use 100% again this year, we'll actually get dinged with a surcharge for that extra.
$270,000.
That's what the
ex-
amount would end up, is
Yeah.
$270,000 if we use the same amount of water this year as we did last. So I mean, and we're already into this year, 3 months, so
The question really I wanted to bring to you is how do you want to handle that? How do we help our water users to conserve water, together? Do we look at reducing those tiered levels in the rate schedule by 10% or whatever equivalent, or
And so
do more
you're disincentivized to use more water because then you get bumped
You'd
to
have
the
to pay
next
more for that
tier.
water that
You know,
used.
I don't think as many people as a homeowner, I don't check that tier usage. But I tell you what would really impact me is if we put it in real terms, like one less bath a week will save. You know what I mean? Like if we start to say things like, if you flush your toilet 10 times, remove one of those flushes, and let it
If it's
mellow
yellow,
if it's yellow, right?
If
We
it's
don't
yellow,
have to
let it
say
mellow.
that. Yep,
If it's
but
brown,
I'm
flush it down.
really serious because when I remember the electricity shortage that, in the 70s, and I remember the droughts that we've had. And I remember it was things like it was an information campaign on television, and they would show turn off every light and unplug things. And so I think when we're talking about water, if we can put it in real people terms and say, do one less bath a week, one less giant tub bath, or one less flush a day.
I agree with this.
And maybe let it,
Shorter showers.
do it, shorter shower, shorten your
My
shower by
son
1
brought this
minute
one
if you
last summer
can.
like this.
And if you can just say, do everything by 10% less, do 1 out of 10 less, then we covered it and we aren't paying this much. And because if in my mind I'm thinking one less bath, then I'll be like, okay, I'll have a quick 5-minute shower and I'll soak my feet the next time, I mean, it's just kind of a common sense thing. And I think that if we put it in everybody's mind that we're trying to take it down by 1 out of 10, that's not difficult.
The other thing you can
My
do.
son started peeing outside to save water.
That's what I'm talking about.
That was it. That was the state concern. He just
More.
decided to pee outside and doesn't gonna flush the toilet.
The other thing you can do.
Lord have mercy, right?
So I think you can raise education on the webpage, provide links to, how you all have that little, on all your faucets, at least all the bathroom faucets, you have the aerator thing, the strainer. You can actually swap that out for a low flow head that will actually reduce your water consumption. You can also have low flow shower heads that work awesome. And I think, again, provide links to those. I know Rocky Mountain Power, oddly enough, was giving those out for free last year. And I'll check and see if they still are. But again, there's resources out there to conserve. And we just need to make sure people are aware of those, because just changing out those heads makes it so you could still have your shower, but you're going to use automatically 10% water. And so you can design your house to be more conservation minded if you just do it right.
One interesting suggestion that came online, I can't take credit for this at all, but somebody said that they catch the water while the water is heating up for their shower and reuse it in their garden. So
I've done that. I've taken it, if I was warming something up with water or something, I'd take it out and water my plants with it.
So that's an interesting suggestion, and I'm sure there are other great suggestions. I think that the point that Robert originally was getting at, though, is that the only way that we have to monitor whether people are abiding by this or not is the accountability of your water bill. So if you went into the next tier, and so the suggestion was made, and I'm not saying that this is a good one or a bad one, but suggestion was made that we lower the tier so that you advance
By
to the next
10%.
one. Yeah, you advance to the next tier 10% faster.
So, I mean, the only challenge I see with that is just that larger families, larger households are gonna bear the brunt of that. Like, I don't think I'll ever go over that tier. I just, we're very rare. Don't look at my bill, whatever. I'm not positive. And also to her point, I don't check it enough. I mean,
I
I know.
don't check it.
Yeah.
I agree.
I
But you
always
will.
check my-
But
so
you will.
I
if your
water
next bill
my
is $4 more.
I'm
with
gonna-
home
how much
and
No,
water.
I still.
And I
won't.
only go
I
over
really
more are we
won't.
talking?
I
And
won't.
that's
I
usually
get-
July or August, I go over it.
Like, how
because
much more are we talking?
That's,
Even if it's $30 more.
We're talking
I
about
get a little
maybe everybody asking.
It's
for
about
like
$40.
7,000
How
gallons.
much I paid,
About
and in my
$40
mind, I just
over,
think, well, we
something like
must have
that.
been
I must have
doing
raised
something
prices again.
special. No, I would think
So,
something, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't
Is
make
it-
me go, I need to do my part if I can. And I would also think it'd be a great thing to say, $270,000. If we don't do our part, this is what it'll cost us if we go to our 100%. And so that's taxpayer dollars. So we, are so upset when any fines and fees go up. So I think that should also be on that front page of our website that says, remember, we've got 270,000 that we'll have to come up with. If you'll take one less of everything, one less flush, one less run your dishes, one less water turn.
Yeah,
somehow.
the educational campaigns are necessary and they're effective. I think our experience, certainly with secondary water, is there's about 20% of the population that will subscribe to the education. And Ryan Mills in water, he thinks that I'm being generous by saying 20%. But, it gets to 80% of the people when the rubber hits the road. And that's
So we could do
usually
both.
So I can, but are we going to leave it 10% lower in perpetuity? I guess as long as we're in drought.
And I don't know that the 10% is the answer, but
I mean, yeah, I don't know even if you
is
can
there
tell.
some way that we can, just kind of really hammer it home that don't use as much water? I don't know if that's the right answer though.
I do think that it has merit that we'll just say your allotment has been dropped by 10% and just say, look, I think we can work that. But I want to make sure that, first of all, I love a deal. Anytime you can get cool stuff for cheaper, I'm all over that. So let's find out
Like
those.
water, that's cool.
Well, like
That's funny.
stuff
Sorry.
you can put on your
Cool
house.
stuff like water.
I love
cheaper.
stuff.
That's great.
So yeah, again, if that Rocky Mountain Power thing is still out there, I would like to get that information out and say, hey, swap out, your fixtures here and your shower heads here, and let's make sure we help educate people to try and make it as automatic, because once you make it automatic, it doesn't matter anymore because they don't have to think about it.
So I will throw out this observation of our history here, and that is that about 5 years ago, when we changed our structure, Jordan, you were here, you remember that. What we saw in that first year of making the significant changes that we saw, that almost half the city's water supply was being used by less than 10% of the people, because they were just going way over. If you were over, you were way over. So what we did is we changed the structure that when you were way over, it was way expensive because you were using a lot of other people's water share. We saw in that first year that almost all of that 10% went away because they had to pay so much because people were watering everything with culinary, because the old system was pay $10 more and use all you want. So as soon as you had to pay for the extra 1,000 gallons every time you went over, I think it was 12,000 gallons a month, it got crazy expensive and people stopped it. So that kind of tells us that we do have a reaction to the cost at some point, but I'm not suggesting that that's the only way we monitor it. I'm just saying that, there is a point where people say, well, I could just keep affording more. So you got to kind of, even if we targeted just the very highest percent of water users, because we're not talking about big families when you get over 12,000 gallons a month. We're talking about pools and daily watering of giant gardens. And so we're talking about very conscious.
I'd kind of like to see the data then to see where that cutoff is before we kind of make a decision on what that rate looks like or what that
It's like
potential
what?
penalty looks like.
And I'm sure it's changed, but
Remind me
years
what the
ago, it
tiers
was
are right
around
now.
9,000.
4, 8, and 12.
It was 4, 8, and then every 1,000 is what we are. 4, 8, and every 1,000.
I go over once a year. because my horses drink culinary water, and I think it's like $42 for the next, something like that, isn't it?
I don't know.
I'm always a little shocked when I see it, I'm like, oh, this was that much.
I think,
It's pretty high.
so I could be supportive of decreasing the allotment of the 8 and just do the 8 and the.
And 4.
the-
It's 4, 8 is the tiers that we have, and then every 1,000 you pay for each additional 1,000. I'm suggesting that really we could save the city a real big ton, even if just those additional thousands over the tiers, were costly. But maybe not. Maybe that's
Just raising the rate for the additional thousands.
As expensive as it is, seriously, like even I'm like, I'll take one less bath this week just to make sure we don't go over. Like it's.
I would say
it's
instead of raising the
expensive.
rate for the thousands, you just make the tier 10% less. It's not quite as clean that way.
Like each tier, so even the
Yeah.
4,000, make it 3,600 or something.
Well, it would be,
10% of 4,000.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, 3,600.
I don't think that's as shocking as the bill
7,200.
when it's. a
No,
pretty
so the
highly
thing is-
priced. Is math.
So it's the same thing. I mean, you'll jump into the next tier earlier. So it's the effect is the same, but it's easy to justify that.
If you don't
What
do
you
your
did is you
10%,
lowered the
you have to
allotment
pay
as
more.
opposed to raise the
I'm right,
price.
you don't gotta
Right.
yell. Why you yelling?
Inside voice. This is my inside
Damn,
voice.
man.
Yeah, Steve.
Steve has
so
some information.
Oh,
Steve
Steve.
deals with billing, and what I don't want to do is make
Let's add 6
a
tiers.
difficulty with billing, so let's.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're gonna talk.
6
What
new
do you
tiers.
say?
So yeah, it is. One thing I was gonna say, we talked about reducing the tiers. Right now, we currently bill on per 1,000 gallon. allotment. System set up that way. So I would recommend if you drop from 8 up to 7. That kind of tier.
Don't
I
come
know
up
you're
with our
trying- I know
own.
you're trying to keep it at 10%, but that's what I'd recommend.
We can't get any more accurate on the meters than the 1,000 gallon.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
On the
good.
readings.
God, see, education, that's what,
Education.
that little tidbit matters.
Always comes down to logistics.
And it's, what is the price break again? Did you say that?
So the up to 4,000 is $20.49 base rate. You pay an extra $1 for the next 4,000 block. And then from there, it's every per 1,000 gallon, it steps up. $3.24 for the next
For the
4,000.
9th.
That's per 1,000. And then it goes to $3.40 for the next step up of $3.59 and then $4.19.
So every time you reach another block of 4,000, the
Increases
cost of
the-
1,000 goes up. And I actually believe, just based on with all the research we did the last time, and it could have changed, but probably even if we just raise the tiers above the standard tiers. Because we do know that, if you have a family of more than 2 kids, you probably do go over 4,000. So the idea was if we set a second tier at 8,000, then you're always still paying the same price if you stay relatively the same. But there was a significant change. We got to only like 10% of the people, once you get over 9,000 gallons, it was only 10% of Syracuse that used more than 9,000.
So you're saying one of the things we could do is add another tier at 8,000. So we are, wait,
There
so
is
it's already 4 and 8.
There
So
is
it-
one at 8.
There is one. at
There's
8.
one at
So,
4, 8, 9,
yeah,
10,
okay.
12.
You could start at 7, or you could just bump up
add
50
a
cents or
tier at
something.
6.
Or bump up the price at, quarter, 50 cents after 9,000 gallons, because that's where people are not conserving.
Well, but the thing is, we want everyone to conserve a little bit more.
One thing you could look at too is that second tier, the $1 for the next 4,000. You could look at doing a price per 1,000.
In the
that
second tier.
The average home in Syracuse uses about 5,000 to 6,000 gallons. So that's kind of your.
So most will be
I
under
like-
We want
7,000.
to pull everybody to that 6,000.
So I actually think adding $1 for every 1,000 over
Over 4,000 or 8,000?
Over 9.
Over 4.
Yeah, because if we're trying to get everyone.
So basically make
If
involved in
everyone's
this,
trying to reduce,
Then it. yeah.
disincentivize going to the next 1,000.
Okay, so how do you feel about the second tier? Because there's the suggestion on the table that you break up the second tier into each
I think
thousand,
that's what you're saying, right?
or you just each thousand over the second tier. Or maybe you just take the second tier and raise the price.
I think everyone after the first tier is 1,000.
Okay.
So 1,000, so just,
So it's 4,000, then 5,000, 6,000.
yeah,
So-
so at
So-
5,000, you pay another dollar.
From
At
being
6,000,
someone
you
who
pay another
actually
dollar.
does go over the limit, and I do, and I admit that, I don't have a problem paying more.
Right.
So honestly, like, from all the people around the table, this one specific thing would affect me more. And I don't think $1 for 1,000 gallons is a lot. Like, I think it's,
I hear you.
yeah, I mean, I mean,
Well, no,
honestly,
but
I
really,
don't,
it
agree,
does.
I
It has
agree.
to.
I use a lot of culinary water for animals, and I would expect to pay more in being, you know, in an economic system that I am in, but I mean, but it's reasonable, it's feasible. If you use that much more water, like, you can't come to me and be like, oh, you have to pay more for your water, and maybe like, oh, that's just the worst.
So
It wouldn't make sense, like, it's fair,
It's
it's
worth
fair.
water.
I got
It's
you.
worth water, that's
So
it, it's worth
one
water.
consideration to consider,
I did
when we
pretty good,
started
though.
the system, we recognized that 80% of the city was 6,000 or less. And so we didn't want to raise the price by a huge amount of a lot of the citizens, because
Yeah, that wouldn't be fair. I
Yeah.
mean, raising it on people who use the same amount every month really wouldn't be fair, but for the people who go up above and way over, and I am
But-
one of those people once or twice a year.
But
It makes sense to
we
do
want
that.
The whole
everybody to
point is
reduce,
that
not just-
everyone,
We need
because
everybody, even
we are
though.
saying that there are plenty
I
of
think
people who
you're-
are being careful with their water, but we need them to be even
More
more
careful.
careful.
Even the 4,000.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone, yeah.
So I think that makes more sense with what he's saying, but as far as the teeth, I don't know that that's there. I think that's what your point is that it's not hitting you enough to make it change behavior.
Yeah, it's not hitting enough to make it change. Well, I wouldn't change my behavior anyway for the reason it is,
At
but
some point.
yeah, I mean, it just doesn't, it's not a big enough difference to me that I don't, when it's like just $1, it doesn't seem like it's that big enough difference that
I think
if,
we
after
take
they
the-
get after a certain point, the higher you go, it should tack on, the more
So-
you use.
We
okay,
take the
but
270,000
you-
divided by what the system would get us back. And then
to be clear, you're saying that dollar, well, that dollar right now takes you from 4,000 to 8,000 gallons.
Yeah,
But if you do what Jordan's suggesting, if you go from 4,000 to 8,000, it would be $4, $1 for each.
and I
She's
would
saying
agree
she
with
doesn't
that.
care.
I'm saying that makes sense. I'm saying
Okay.
that's fair because I use so much more than, it's fair. Citizen-wide, it's fair.
And then once you hit the 8,000, it would be how much per thousand?
324.
Make it
After
648.
So
648.
I have to go
I
going
like
back
that
to
number.
what Brody was saying about 20% of people will respond to education.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that's true in a normal situation, but we saw a tremendous response last year with very few people needing a fine. You're right. It was more
That
about
was after
a
the
warning,
notification.
right?
Yeah.
So there's your education.
But
in my
no one's
opinion.
gonna get a notification
They-
for culinary water.
I think
But
that was
maybe that's
effective.
something we can do as a notification.
I think that was
for
effective because it felt like a fine, like
Yeah.
they got cited.
So what if we even put something on everybody's door that says $270,000 fee for the city? That comes out to this much for your
Yeah, I'm-
household alone. Here's what we're suggesting and here's what the tiers are gonna do. I think we actually have to take this door to door because that is kind of like a warning and it's physical.
Mhm.
And you're not saying, well, we're hoping you get it on the airwaves. So, and
Yeah.
and
Can we
maybe,
What about,
maybe we
Can
can
we send it with
hire.
the bill?
can we
Yeah,
like,
maybe-
because
well,
kids are
online,
amazing
right?
at convincing their parents through nagging to do things. So can
Yeah.
our schools kind of help? Like,
Yeah,
reduce water. So when they go home, that's what my son did to me. He's like, Mom, you need to shut that water off. We can't do that. And they're
I mean,
great
they're
about
doing-
it. So if we
they're doing
convince
that.
the kids that they need to save water, the parents will as well.
yeah, I agree. And I think that if we're saying, and here's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Here's what, if you'll do this, then you're doing all that we're asking you to do.
Yeah.
But I do think that we're hyper alert to it right now.
Yeah.
Whereas there are a lot of things we haven't been, I don't think I've ever remembered in however many years I've been in charge of my own water bills, feeling this concerned with water. But I do remember going through some scarcity in my younger days and being really, we were hyper alert about electricity and water for some
So-
years.
Let me ask you this. So it's how much did you say? Above 8,000?
Yeah.
Is there, again, I think the point is if I paid an extra $1, I don't think I would care.
Mm-mm.
I would think that the dang city council raised my fee again.
Right?
So
So would there be any stomach to making it, $2? And so that if they hit, so now you're,
I think they're, for the concern of this summer, a higher fee for that is important for, at least for this year. Because I mean, we're pumping lakes dry.
Mhm.
And so we have to rely on Echo to stay as full as possible. But for at least this year, it needs to be higher than $2. I
well, no,
think.
so it'd be $2 per thousand. So there's a potential that they're gonna pay $8 and then in
Just
the
to get
next
to the
tier, they're gonna pay 3, whatever it is, times 4.
I always plan to pay like $40 extra. So like that's whenever I go over.
Well,
So
Well, I
that's,
don't wanna make it $10 for every.
I'm not saying,
No.
but there's not very many people that go over, like he was
you're
saying.
right,
It's like,
you're not.
there's not a ton of people that do
But
it.
that's kind of why I do feel like
I want it
if
to
we
be
had
enough
some
that's-
level where people, because like I said, the majority of the people in the city, over half the city are between the 4 and 6.
Yeah.
So, but there are a lot of people that we saw month to month when we were doing that analysis that went just between 5 and 6. And I hate to see those people who just over that one little couple of gallons have to change their bill every month because they're still within a very reasonable, manageable amount of water.
And so.
It's the outliers, the excessive users that, family, okay, but, that are like, okay, I'm 10,000 gallons this month when I could be 4. That's a real change, but 5 to 6 is a small change. And I don't want those people to like, oh, I had to pay an extra $10 because I was, and that's.
So
more
then
than
why
we're
don't we
saying.
do it if like a small amount for the first couple thousand over, and then if you get excessive, like I do, once you hit like 8,000, it's gonna be like $4, $8, $16 every 1,000 after. So once you hit about like to 8 to 10,000, it should get costly.
I do think there are some people who actually do make good efforts to conserve though too, so I would hate to penalize.
Well, that's what I'm
them.
saying. Once
So
you get like
keep
8,000
that in
gallons,
mind, too.
yeah. But
And that's
at
what we decided.
8,000 gallons, there's not very many households that hit that.
If we
are
went
there?
that aggressive, I would need to see the data first, just to see. kind of-
How many is,
Yeah.
it's a, yeah.
One
how many is
other,
it?
one other strategy, and this kind of goes, I think, along the lines of more of the educational route, is kind of like the inverse of like the fundraising meter. Since culinary is metered, we know how much we're using.
Mhm.
Maybe like throughout the year, we can have like here's how close we are to our allotment. Before
Once we
get
hit 50%, prices go up by 20%.
before we get surcharged.
Like
then
right
it's
there
up.
on the opposite corner of Maverick,
And-
like, so everybody can see it.
75%.
And then it
37%.
explodes.
And so if we do go over, then we just have to raise rates to pay for it.
Well, and that was part of the
Yeah,
whole.
it's gotta be visual
disincentivizing.
though, yeah, they gotta be able to see it.
I
Okay.
think it's really important for people to see this.
Yeah.
And I'd even like to say, we're turning this to a mud pit. Willard is gonna be mud. I mean, like you said, Dave, I've never
Yeah.
seen that, and that's not even on my radar, and so people need to just.
It's the out of sight, out of
Hear it,
mind theory,
yeah.
you know, if they
I
don't,
think
if
you're
it's
right.
not right in
So-
their vision, they're not aware of it going on.
So is everyone okay with the tiered 1,000 after
Yeah.
4?
I'm good with
But
that.
yeah,
And so are we good with $1 or do you want to make it $2?
I think
after
the data on that matters, because I think after about 8,000 gallons, it should
Yeah, so-
increase it a lot more than.
I just think that for I think $2, making it, setting it $2 at least makes it so if I'm $6 up because I went 3,000s above 4, I would at least check my bill and be like, that's weird, what's going on?
Okay,
$2 per thousand. Is that what you're saying?
$2 per thousand.
All right, so let's say this. I think Seth's point is really good. We should look at some data. We're
Yeah.
not voting tonight
Right.
anyway. So let us see if we can get together some data that you can use as the basis for your decision in the next meeting. We'll still
That's fair.
put on a generalized resolution that may or may not be voted on according to this, but we'll also have some more data. Does
I
that
always
sound like a
appreciate
good
data.
stopping point for the night?
Sure. That's great.
Okay.
Let me just mention too that the city was going to, the city's going to make good efforts too to conserve water too. One of our big water use is the splash pad. It is culinary because it has to be treated for good health. So we do recirculate it and treat it, but from time to time we'll flush it out just to keep it clean, which is just state regulations. So normally we start up Memorial Day and run it through till Labor Day. So in reducing 10%, we could end it by about the day the school kids go back into school, because that's usually when we see the use of the splash pad goes
Yeah,
down.
that makes sense.
So that would be sometime in the end of August, and that would be
About a month or.
about a 10% reduction for us.
I think that's great.
So are you good with that?
So a
Yeah,
couple
we want to
weeks
share
early.
that too,
Yeah.
that that's
Yeah.
occurring so they can see where.
And maybe that's what we do too. Here's the city's 10%. Let's list all the things that we're going to take down 10%.
And emphasize that it's recirculated. It's not all, yes, we lose about 10% to evaporation, but for the most part, that's recirculated water and reused.
We ought to
That's
look at identifying locations to do additional xeriscaping as well.
I think that's
Yeah,
on the
because-
agenda, that is on a future agenda for
It's
spend
proposed
this
in the
year.
Budget too.
Yeah, is for more of that. And we'll look at choosing which sites as well.
I will be coming to you in a future meeting, not tonight, to talk about House Bill 242 with the secondary water meters.
I thought that was
That's-
tonight.
I thought that is tonight on the legislative part.
Oh, yeah.
I think
It's
I
part of
think
the
Paul will
program, but
brief
Just
it,
catch
but
on it.
no.
Oh, yeah.
It's not,
But
It's
to talk about,
2030, right?
we're gonna have to talk about how are we gonna
Yeah.
react to that, and strategize.
We're
Okay?
gonna scream
We need
and-
some strategery.
yes. All right,
All right.
so let's
Thank you,
move
Robert.
on to potential amendments in our land use designations and water conservancy, which is all related to what qualifies us for these other programs. It doesn't specifically say that, but that was the intent of this item.
Yeah, it's like water night tonight.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I reviewed all of our land use ordinances for some things that we can do. The things that we're already reviewing, we're already looking at site plans. And that's an easy step that we could easily look at all these commercial projects as they come through the process. There might be other areas of the ordinance where we could talk about limiting our water usage, but this is just the land use portion that, that I deal with most frequently. But what I found is that we're kind of silent on the issue. We don't really require certain things, but we also don't prohibit certain things. And so I've gone through and added some limits on the percentage of lawn that could be in commercial projects. Then some of our multifamily projects, I've limited the amount of lawn that a higher percentage, 35% rather than the 15%. I think there is still a place for some of those grassy areas, but it should be limited to the play areas or things like that. So I've got a whole bunch of proposals. We've been talking about this for a little while, and it's just been kind of floating up around in theory. And so this is kind of where the rubber would hit the road with an exact ordinance, an exact language of what it would say.
So it says more or less, it would qualify us for what does that mean? It would.
The water Weaver Basin.
I know, we all want to know, is
We
this
wanna
good
qualify.
enough? We
Yeah.
want to qualify residents so they can get the
Yeah.
incentive to convert
$1
their park
something per
strip.
square foot.
I've been working with John Perry. He came to our
Presented to us
council
on
meeting last year. I haven't got the thumbs up from him yet, but in the meantime, we can discuss these, and I hope it's good enough. He gave us a list of things that he's expecting. This doesn't check all of them, but and the reason why not all of them made it through here, because it was like requiring indoor plumbing fixtures of water sense type. That's not something that I deal with in some of the residential things that requiring homes to limit grass in the park strip. We don't see a landscape plan in my department. When somebody builds a house, they have to do a site plan, which shows setbacks, the footprint of the building and all that, but we don't review landscape plans. So in my department, I don't have a clear time to review that. So I took that, or I didn't include that. I did put, the one thing we have.
Just put in there the expectation, like other things, we'll put an expectation out there, even though we don't spend the time to go and review whether they followed it or not. Even if you put water-wise fixtures in the ordinance, I mean.
I think that's a good idea. There's a
Doesn't
lot of
that
things.
cover the base so
inspection,
that we can
yeah.
be part of that grant?
Yeah.
Water-wise fixturing isn't, we have the ordinance in
Yeah.
place.
Right, we
Yeah.
would never know, it's not like we could ever find out if they switched out the fixture in their house. But if it's in a code that that's what we expect, then we qualify.
Yeah, I just don't know which code that would be. So right now we have a code that says you have to have landscaping in within 18 months of final inspection. And I'm proposing adding some of this, not fluffy, but encouragement language, intent language. So I'd say water-wise landscaping is encouraged, including reducing turf areas by adding landscape beds with native and low water use plants, using at least 3 inches of mulch in planted beds to retain moisture, using drip irrigation systems to water planter bed areas, grouping irrigation system zones to areas with similar water needs, using irrigation controllers equipped with rain delay, avoiding overspray, especially in areas less than 8 feet wide, such as park strips, and planting trees to create shade.
Can we actually, if all this is encouraging, can we change the irrigation controllers to smart irrigation controllers?
Yeah, we can
And
say whatever.
I thought that's where we got to last year though, was we encouraged and then that
Well,
didn't qualify.
We were
It's an
concerned about
encouragement.
being punitive because we were kind of getting heavy-handed with it, but I do, at this point in time, I see this as being a continual problem we're going to have in the state, especially having attended the Great Salt Lake Summit and recognizing where we really stand with our conservation. I think, I don't want it to be punitive and heavy-handed, but I do think that this is probably going to stay in ordinance for quite a while. I don't see this as being a year, just this year, we're gonna be dealing with this. I think this
And
is
it's
gonna be
really only for
something
new
helpful.
build.
Yeah, and one of
Yeah.
those questions
It's
a lot of
just-
people have is why do they expect to have grass in so soon?
Or the
You know,
HOAs is. a lot of
Yeah.
them, right?
Well,
But-
18 months, it really isn't that soon.
I know, but
Yeah.
what if you don't want grass? Like what if you don't want?
That's why.
It actually doesn't say
doesn't
grass,
say
it says
nothing about
improvements.
It just has to be landscape.
Yeah,
landscape.
improvements. You
Just
don't have to have it completed.
Not weeds.
Yeah, you have to improve the land. And if it's not 100%, you can take more than 1 year to do it.
And for the record, improving could technically be mowing the weeds. We just have to keep them up.
The definition of landscaping in our ordinance says it doesn't say anywhere you have to have grass. It includes things like patios and pergolas.
Hardscape, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you could put rocks over a weed barrier and, it says the word landscaping, so you assume that there'd be some sort of live plant material somewhere.
Yeah, but
So
so they don't really have to do anything?
They have to improve
Yeah,
the
the-
land. They have
I
to-
mean, if they raked out the dirt, that would be improving the land.
Yeah.
Yeah, our
But
city
they have
hasn't
to
been
keep
real
it not
involved in
natural.
that.
They have
Zen
to
garden
keep it-
type?
Well, they have to keep it raked out.
Because at some point, if the weeds are
Maintained.
growing up,
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
code enforcement would come
Maintain.
through. Let you know you got 6-foot weeds.
Yeah, we could be more precise of what we
Garrett,
expect
yeah.
landscaping to be.
I know, is there anywhere we want to put, we encourage weed barrier underneath xeriscaping? I notice we don't say that anywhere.
Are we gonna go
encourage you to do it
looking,
the
are
right
we
way.
gonna go dig up?
Well,
the
what I-
rocks
Yard.
and that?
No,
Let me see if
Well,
that's.
I said encourage. I just don't want people to
Kills
go,
off.
I just don't want people to go dump a pile of rocks in
Fine.
their front yard and spread it out, because that's gonna create more problems than it
Then you
solves.
can definitely spray kills all on it because you have nothing growing. and it's
Diesel.
Way cheaper. Ooh, what is wrong with you, man? Jeez.
How do you really feel?
It's so dirty.
No, this is not cheap right now.
That's true, that's expensive.
So yeah, the purpose is to just show you guys this. Do we like it?
I
Are we
thought
missing something?
this was good. I did wanted to add in that I wanted it to be, to encourage smart controllers, just because,
The water sense?
not necessarily water sense, because a lot of times you don't have to put in sensors nowadays. Google knows if it's rained in your area.
It says using irrigation controllers equipped with rain delay. Is that what you would define a smart controller as?
There's
No.
actually a lot that.
Rain delay could be,
You could just
you push a
manual push the
button
button rain delay.
and you have a rain delay.
Yeah.
But it requires a user
That means-
interaction.
That means human smart
It
controller.
does.
Whereas
It
I
needs to be
think
Wi-Fi
smart
enabled.
controller that does it on its own.
Yeah, smart controller, like I get a notification says your watering has been delayed due to wind.
That's fantastic.
That's great, because when the wind is blowing, it's blowing in the street.
And then you're gonna get a fine
That's
for
so
watering on the wrong day.
I do think that what we'd like to see in the
Didn't give a
next
lot of
meeting
those.
though, is at least a comprehensive list of everything that's being asked for. Even if we feel like we can't monitor it, I think we need to be aware of what that list is. And
To
that,
meet the-
that I
to
think
meet
was
the-
good, yeah.
Well, and we've
That
had
was
several
the
people
ask.
ask us when we're going to be in compliance with
Yeah.
the water.
Yeah, I've had
lines.
that.
So
We'd
we
like
kind of have
do
to
what we
know
can.
So-
what has to get us into compliance.
Yeah.
In the memo, the list, the bullet list, that's the list. But I don't go back and say what is specifically met.
So
I don't
again,
do that.
can we send
list
this to
is
them and
listed.
say, does this,
I already did,
and?
and he says that he wants to meet.
Oh,
So
that means there's red line.
All right.
Nice. Take Paul with you.
So let's make sure that happens before our next meeting.
Okay.
And
Sorry, Paul.
I'd love to be there as well. I mean, however many council members you want, but I'd like to ask questions.
Yeah, I'm in favor of everything we've done so far, including what you've mentioned, Jordan, and then trying to get to that hurdle of meeting there.
Like in this, we say reducing turf areas, but we don't say anything about any type of, we just say use native and low water use plants, but we don't say anything about xeriscaping or low water scaping for a whole yard.
Yeah.
And just, I want to offer some guidelines, because I don't want someone to just walk out there and, again, pile rocks in the front yard, spread them out and call it good.
And the whole.
Dude,
front
because I
yard.
still
I have a
want it-
neighbor right now that has
I
that.
still want there to be a standard.
Yeah.
That's so bad.
Which is why
It's
we
just an
said we
empty
didn't want
yard
it to
dirt.
be punitive last year.
All
where
right, so
it's
I
pretty
guess
bad.
there's a good reason for that, and I will share just that I had a neighbor who bought leftover carpet from the Olympics and rolled that over his dirt.
That's
And
cool. It's an
put no
improvement.
yard in. They just bricked down carpet from the Olympics.
What
That was the
event?
outdoor carpet. Well,
Like
it was from the
turf
metal stadium.
stuff?
No,
Oh,
it was actual carpet that they had in giant rolls.
That's sort of awesome.
I would like to see that.
That's a letter of the law.
They moved and the new owner did not like that, so it's gone. But
Dead ground underneath.
Yeah,
yeah, that was 2002.
Chaotic,
so-
aren't they?
we have a house that has in the city
Reduce,
that
reuse,
just has
recycle.
stamped concrete, their whole front
Their
yard.
whole front yard.
And then they have like one little hole where I think there's a rose bush or something.
So if you're driving down 4500,
know.
there's a zero-scaped yard on the east side, and they even have a zero-scaped pond. Like the pond is blue rocks, and they have a fish in there made out of yellow rock, and it's fantastic. I would like to see
I
lots of that.
want to drive down and see that. now.
It's so cute.
It's adorable.
Okay, so we're gonna move on
Okay.
and talk
Well done,
about
Noah.
legislative
Thanks, Noah.
Thank
updates.
you.
And welcome Paul, our city attorney, to the table. Thank you.
I like the purple, Mr. Paul.
To help guide the discussion, I've got PowerPoint. Where is the cord? My goodness.
You want to share on Zoom? Are you on Zoom?
I'm not-
Yeah.
Tried to share on Zoom last week on commission, and it didn't
Or
work.
did it
So
work?
yeah.
So the people that are online. Oh, yeah, I think we all.
Well, the camera's there. They
They
should be able to see the
actually
TV.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
the TV's in there. It's a double hop, but you get there.
That's one way to do it. Okay, so this is part one of legislative update. We should watch that TV show instead. Just kidding. All right, so we're gonna get some updates now. Rick, bear in mind, there were 512 bills passed this year at the legislature. Nearly all of those are gonna become law. I've heard of one that was vetoed, but that's the only one I've heard of so far. So we get updates throughout the legislative session from ULCT, and then a lot of the department heads, all of us, we go to conferences in the spring, and we'll get updates, and we'll hear about bills that maybe we didn't hear about yet. No. Yes, otherwise it'll shut down. And then sometimes we'll get notification from state agencies, or there's word of mouth, or, sometimes years later, you'll find it, a code and say, wow, when did that change? And you find out it was years later. That's just kind of how it is. So there's no way unless we had like a full-time, like legislative person that we could ever give you an update on everything that touches on the city. So I just wanted to focus on a couple that are going to require some action that we're aware of. These are mostly ones that we're the league really focused on quite a bit. We touched a little bit on 242, House Bill 4242, which deals with secondary water metering. We'll talk more about that later, but the short version is basically by 2030, we are expected to have every house metered. And if we don't, there are fines. But there is money. There is money to help us get to that point.
And the motivation there is the sooner you put them in, the more money you get.
Yes.
I think it was 60%. 70?
71st, yeah.
Oh,
For the
Yes,
first year.
But only 10 the last year, so
Yeah.
the sooner you get it done.
Yep, get it done faster. And then if you don't do it, then the penalties get worse year by year by year. Yeah. We'll talk more about that in the future. But let's talk about these 4 bills just for now. So House Bill 303 dealt with local land use amendments. And this is just to be on your radar. We're going to be coming back. We'll have to come back through with some changes to our code. Notice provisions changed a little bit. They require that any land use regulation has to have a summary of it published with it. So we can't just say, this is going to amend this section. We have to explain what it does. We have to do it in lay terms, so we can't use terms of art. We also are required to do subdivision amendment hearings, which we already do, so don't change that. And then I remember, but last year I don't remember how this got snuck in, but there was a change. I think it was at the last minute that cities couldn't change once a development had like a final plat approval. The city couldn't change any of its rules for 10 years that applied to that. Like they were immune for 10 years from any sort of changes to the city code. So that's been removed. You'll notice there's definitely a big theme on affordable housing after the legislature this year. I heard that from the emails and such. So one thing though is moderate income housing is definitely recommended and encouraged. But when it comes to land use application, now that's different from a zone change. That would be considered a land use regulation under LUGMA. A land use application is more like a site plan or a subdivision plat or something like that. We can make moderate income housing a part of that requirement if we've provided incentives. So if we had a code that said, you get an extra, 10% or 50% more units as long as 10% of your units are moderate income housing, something like that. There's an incentive there to build it. Then we can make it a requirement of a land use application. Or if we had a written agreement, so if there was a development agreement or something that required that, or an RDA agreement or something like that, then we could make that a requirement. Otherwise, we can't. So if someone says, I'm not going to do that, I want to do market rate housing 100%, the land use authority can't say, well, we're going to deny you because you're not building moderate income housing. So that kind of goes against the push for moderate income housing. They don't want, cities to punish those people. There's also some changes to boundary agreements. This happens occasionally where you got people who want to adjust their boundaries. Maybe they're if there's been a dispute, then they can use the boundary agreement, which essentially says we're going to agree that our boundary is here. Now, if we run into a situation where someone has done this, they don't have to go through the city to do this. They can just agree amongst themselves, go file it with the county, and then the line usually just gets moved. If they come to the city and they want some sort of land use change, they want a plat change, anything like that, we can say no because you've modified your boundary without going through a city process. So we're okay to say no to that. And also they aren't allowed to adjust the plat. So hopefully the county won't allow that to happen if it has in the past. If it's a platted subdivision, they're not going to be able to use a boundary agreement to modify their boundary.
Was that what happened with that property over there by the city shops?
Actually, Brody and I went down and checked in on that.
So what happened with?
So we had an understanding. So the county recorder's office has told us that because they also, the nature of being the recorder, they have to maintain the county's records.
Mhm.
So anybody who turns something in, they have to accept. It doesn't mean it's legally binding. They have to accept that record and put it on file. So in that case, these people filed a bifurcation of property as to ownership, but that doesn't mean that they have any different zoning, because what we control is the zoning. So the county, as of the county record, they could bifurcate, and they have to by law, except that somebody sold part of that property. That doesn't mean that, you know, we had to change the zoning, but
So was that what it was with that land? Is that what
yeah,
you did with it?
and that's,
Okay.
they looked up that specific example for us and basically said, these people came in and showed us the deed of purchase that sold part of that land. So we have to account on the county record that someone bought part of this land. And that's what they did. We don't have to change the zoning part of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And yeah, and we don't have to acknowledge it and say, well, that's a legal non-conforming use. It's not. So we can deny a land use application.
right. But we'll never be able to deny or to say they have to stop pending our approval. They have to accept purchase agreements and land trades. They have to.
Gotcha. All right.
So we learned that.
That was clarified in this bill as well. So the things to watch for in the next few months coming up, we'll have some updates to our noticing sections likely in our land use code. And then as part of our, we'll be talking more about moderate income housing, consider whether we want to offer some sort of incentives through RDA funding or other mechanisms. You can do it through, density bonuses. There's all sorts of ways you can incentivize moderate income housing. That's something to look forward to and in the coming months. And then boundary agreements, we could probably look at our code and see if there's any language we want to strengthen in there. But there's to watch for. So housing affordability amendments, there is a requirement that they've added now where the general plan is going to need to have what's called an implementation plan as part of their moderate income housing policy. So what we have in our general plan, I went through and read it, it's not going to qualify as an implementation plan. So we're going to have to update our general plan this year by October 1st. And it's going to include the implementation plan. It requires specific measures and benchmarks for implementing the strategies that we choose. We used to be able to just pick 2 of those strategies. Remember, there was that menu of like 20 some things.
Yeah.
And we picked 2. Now we have to do 3 minimum. And part of the plan is we have to say, okay, here are our strategies. And by this date, we're going to have accomplished this. And we're going to be setting goals. And then we are going to have to also provide annual reports every year. Now, we already had to do some reporting. But this is now going to go through the council. I think before it could be submitted by Noah or Royce or someone. Now it has to go to the council and we have to submit that by October 1st rather than January 1st. The reason they did that is that'll jive a little bit more with our fiscal year. So if we do something, if we're going to plan for something, we can plan for it with the budget and then report that we did something for this coming year in our budget. It requires us to be a little more specific than what we're doing right now. So you got to say, here's what we did this last fiscal year to help with moderate income housing. Here are the barriers that we faced. And then we have to update every year on what our accessory dwelling units, how those have changed. So we're expecting some forms from Workforce Services by July 1st.
Do we have a clear indication of how many accessory dwelling units we have?
We can look at like how many building permits have been pulled for them, but if people have done it without a building permit, we don't know.
And wouldn't get credit for it, and this is where we need to show credit.
Yeah, we have documentation of the legal ones. Yeah, is there any?
What are the repercussions for not meeting these metrics? Are they reviewing these plans and these reports and here we go.
It's a carrot and stick approach. I need to find out what funding they're talking about here, but if you do turn in your reports on time, and if you've chosen 5 strategies, not just 3, but 5, then you get priority consideration for certain projects. And that includes, there's a transportation fund where you can get priority for consideration. I don't know the parameters of that fund. And there's also even the COVID-19 program that they say will get priority consideration for it. I don't know how much money is in that fund. If we don't do it, then we are considered ineligible to even access those funds.
Are we getting any of these funds now?
I don't know.
Depends on which transportation fund.
Everybody looks to Steve.
Yeah, it's I can get back to you on that. I don't know whether we have.
I mean, I don't intend to be non-compliant. I just want to know, do I care?
So, I mean, the whole point of this, I mean, so the cities, the league has gone and really, I mean, if you heard I don't know if you're listening to the LPC meetings and stuff, but this bill changed dramatically from what was initially proposed by the sponsor. And a lot of that is the league going and helping them understand the city's positions and really that we're not going to be obstructionists, that we're going to be partners in helping to establish this. So I think if we're good partners, then the state will not need to use the stick anymore. They'll see that we're doing what we can. Where they're going to have problems is where cities dig in and say, no, we're not going to allow any sort of affordable housing no matter what. That's when you get bad legislation. Another nuance. So if you do have someone add an internal ADU, we can't assess any impact fees at all for that internal ADU. So for the initial house, yes. Or if you build a house and an ADU at the same time, yes, you can do one fee. And that includes, I was thinking like, well, that doesn't really affect most of us because it's usually like water and sewer. And it's like, what's the difference between, it's all compartmentalized. The parks impact fee kind of makes more sense because that's one more family that's using the parks. Regardless, we can't do it. So that needs to be removed from our fee schedule. So yeah, so in the next 6 months, we need to update our general plan. And that starts under the code with the commission. So you could just ask the commission, hey, could you start looking at this, at least this section of the general plan and start working on it? You could start it here and then send it back to them and have them send it back up. Kind of depends on what you want to do. But for sure, we need to change our moderate income housing section. And then we'll need to pick an additional strategy and maybe, depending on if we've accomplished what's already been picked before, yeah, we need to have at least 3.
If we want to get extra money.
We gotta get up to the
Right. And also we want to make sure that we're compliant because if next year the legislature sees that only 20% of cities have complied with this, then we are no longer partners. We are obstructionists and they're going to.
The legislation.
They can
moves in the stick.
They
I
can
don't
ram
like the
something
word
through.
obstruction.
They
It's
can-
not my friend,
I don't like obstruction either.
right?
And so that's the idea is let's be partners here. Let's give them the information they're looking for and do what we can. And the strategies really can be, they're flexible enough that you can kind of pick what's best for your community. Like they don't say, okay, here are the 3 strategies you all have to follow.
Yeah.
They do give us like 20 some strategies. And there's even a catch-all at the end that says if there's some additional awesome thing that you come up with, then let us know.
And I kind of think we're going to get some credit for having 1,000.
We come up with awesome things all the time.
And then you'll see fee schedules for the internal accessory dwelling units. That should come before you probably next little while too. All right, that's 2 down. May have heard something about the retail facility incentive payment amendments bill, House 151. This applies to both the city and its RDA. And what they're trying to do is stop cities from fighting over retail facilities. Because the idea is we're giving all this money away, like tax increment funding to retail things. And from the state's perspective, it's a complete waste of money because most people aren't coming to Utah to shop. It's usually Utahns are here and we shop here. So what they're doing here is just saying that you can't use your funds to incentivize just a retail facility. So no fighting over a Costco or a Cabela's or whatever it is you want to try and get into your city. You can't do rebates, subsidies, any other offsets. It's a pretty all-encompassing list. If you do any sort of payments for retail facilities, and there's some exceptions we'll talk about, then we have to tell the state about it, and then they have the auditor look into whether it was an appropriate use of the funds. Now, of course, there are exceptions. What bill would be complete without great exceptions? So if you're doing infrastructure, that's master plan, that's okay, even if it's benefiting a retail facility or it's going to chiefly benefit them. You can do a structured park facility, you can demolish things, so if it's part of a redevelopment area. If you're in a particularly like poorer part of the city, I don't know if we have any of these, if you're 50% or more of the residents are below the 70% of the median income, they can do it there. If you've got a mixed use development and they're providing at least 1 housing unit per 1,250 square feet of retail, then you can do some money to this as long as there's moderate income housing involved. And then those public funds can only be used to help with the moderate income housing part. Also, if it's smaller than 20,000 square feet, then you can do it. Or if it's for small business, then you could do it. So if you have a program, I think a lot of cities have this, the program to help small business loans or things like that, you can still do that. Or if it's a nonprofit or a cultural organization, you're okay to.
So basically, RDAs aren't that good of a deal anymore.
No, they're a great deal still. You just need to be focused on not just getting retail. That's the point. So you can get office uses, industrial uses,
Okay.
commercial uses that aren't retail.
Got
They
it.
define retail as where retail is the primary purpose of the business. So if you walk in and there's a whole line of cash registers, it's probably a retail facility. If there's one in the corner and there's like a golf course, that's not a retail facility because they sell golf clubs and hats and stuff in their shop. The whole point is, it's a golf course.
I can't remember, is a definition in like, say for like an event center, would that be considered retail?
Probably not. I mean, that's a service.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll sell some things, but
So it's like where sales tax is generated.
yeah.
basically, or,
If it, yeah, I mean,
Direct sales.
yeah, the
Where
definition
you go
is
to basically
primary.
shop and buy something,
Yeah.
or you go to purchase something.
Yeah, like
Okay.
you wouldn't say like, I want to go
Yeah.
to an event center to go buy
Buy
my
a jersey.
groceries or something.
Yeah.
So what about people that already have tax increment financing that are being paid to these places?
They're okay.
They're
So
okay.
yeah, this
is
cuts
just
off
new.
in July. Yeah, so by July, that's where the cutoff
So if
is.
you want to give somebody a rebate through the RDA, it's gotta be before July,
Gotta move fast. If it's for retail.
if it's retail.
Yeah, but they don't want cities kind of using this for things that aren't generating, jobs and bringing things to Utah rather than just sort of us
Which
fighting
is
over
funny
it.
because it's like, that's the
Money.
state's perspective, but our idea is to bring it to Syracuse, not to
Right,
Utah.
we
It's
need the
like,
sales tax here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
such a
that's
global
why
perspective
people
that
fight over
doesn't-
it.
Yeah,
But if this had been in place, we don't know if RC would have left. They got a really good incentive.
I've never seen it from a different
Who knows?
perspective.
House Bill 151, action item. So just this doesn't really require any actions because there's nothing like pending. But just be aware if you're considering what we can do to attract business, recognize that it's not going to be a business, an option anymore. So be aware of that.
What? Wait, go back one more?
Yep.
Okay,
Just going forward with it.
yeah.
Yeah, just looking forward. Just if you're thinking of enticing a business here, just if they're retail,
You got 3 months.
we'll have to do it just through
I want to jack in the
how awesome the
box.
city is.
as long as
Jack
it's
in the box would
20,000
be
square feet or
like-
less.
Yeah,
In
we're gonna be
and
small.
out.
Okay, last one I'll talk about tonight. This is local licensing amendments, which largely deals with food trucks. But also some street legal ATV stuff got in there.
Wait,
Ooh, almost to that.
What's that? That, you've seen our city, right? Like, how does that work? That free street legal ATV stuff?
All right, I'll tell you.
Carry on.
So under the old definitions, food trucks didn't include ice cream trucks or food carts. Now they do. So however you
Good.
pull the food,
Close that loop.
it's now a food truck. So they're all in the same rules. I think the ice cream trucks didn't like that they had different rules they'd follow. We do have a requirement for reciprocal licensing in our city that was permitted under the old code. Now we have to get rid of that because if someone has a license in any other municipality, we have to recognize
I
it.
think ours is only what, $25?
Now it will be
Zero.
non-existent. Yep. We can say, okay, you have to have a copy of your licensing permits on hand, so we can still have some enforcement if we have a food truck that's problematic.
But sales tax is still collected at the location of the sale.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, yeah, if they allow background checks for ice cream truck drivers. I don't think we require that, but we could. And then if you have a street legal ATV, we can't do nuisance enforcement against those or the businesses that like rent them. And I think that came out of Moab. There's some businesses that have, they rent those and the neighborhoods around them are really upset because they're constantly driving up and down. Legislature said, we don't care.
They're street legal.
It's street legal, so you can't say they're a nuisance.
But so the background checks only for ice cream trucks. What if they do both, like ice cream and malasadas or something?
Good question. I don't know.
Is that like really edgy?
Maybe that's the way around it. They're like, I also sell tacos.
Ice cream pies. And like, why picking on ice cream trucks?
Ever had a
It's
Choco
just-
Taco? I just because that's
I love ice
that's
cream
catering
trucks.
to children specifically. I think that's what they're concerned about. It's just
Somebody's watched too many Datelines on.
could be.
In our neighborhood, the parents chase the ice cream charge on the kids.
So action items, just to look what we will have to change our code related to food trucks and also our fee schedule. And then while we're talking about that, we could ask whether you want to add the background check requirement for ice cream trucks. But that will be coming. Okay, so that's all we have for tonight. If there are bills you've heard about and you would like an update on it, let me know and I will read the bill and I'll get you a synopsis on it and we can update you. Otherwise, we'll probably have, as department heads go to their trainings and stuff, they'll probably have more updates and I don't think it'll just be me.
And the league will have comprehensive update by April.
Yeah, they publish a really good book that goes through every bill every year too.
That sounds like a
Phenomenal read.
Yeah, it's a great read.
Fantastic.
It's helpful. But no,
So-
you actually hit all
Have
the
a
ones I've been
thesaurus
tracking,
next to you.
so nice work.
So we are about 2 hours into and only half of our agenda. So I'm going to declare a 5-minute recess. And we'll be right back here in 5 minutes or less.
I'm taking all 5.
Hour, I'm going to reinitiate this meeting. Call us back to order. And let's pick up with discussion of boundary adjustment with West Point City, Noah.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys an image, or a few images and maps. We have a property owner who would like to do a residential development. And so this is 700 South. And
We are not seeing what you're showing.
you're not seeing it yet.
I'm gonna switch back to Zoom.
We're not picking up what you're laying down. There,
So
bud.
it's not plugged back into my.
Computer. All right. People on Zoom are probably seeing the map.
So you and me.
That gets better as the night goes on, right?
For the world out there.
You're all that matters.
We're the most important.
See how we treat reporters?
So his name is Mark Sandberg, and he wants to build a residential subdivision over here, and he's purchasing some land from UDOT. And he wants to include this little, let me see what else is, this little
Yeah.
triangle. It's like 1.33 acres. He wants to include it in his development. But it is not. See the red line, this is the city boundary. So it's actually in West Point. So we have some choices as a city. Scenario one, we can say, no, we don't feel like it. And then that land will probably just be like, I don't know. They'll have to do a separate development in West Point, maybe, in West
Yeah,
Point.
couldn't we ask him to go to West Point for just that little
Yeah.
house?
Yeah, so West Point would have to entitle it separately, and it would be a separate subdivision, and I don't know what. the zoning
And that's a
will be.
dumb idea. So we agree.
Okay, so is what so we met with West Point staff and kind of drew some boundaries, but so we have lots of different scenarios that we can evaluate. Let me just show you real quick. So this is our general plan. The red color is general commercial. The orange color is medium density. Yeah, the light yellow color is low density residential. So there's going to be West Davis corridor right here, and then 193 is going to come in right here. So this will be an intersection, but it's going to be kind of more like a ramp. You know, you're not going to be able to come in and off this property access wise. There'll be an access point through here, probably a stub in here, and then you build it. There'll be an intersection right here. And I've got the UDOT right here. You can see kind of what they're planning on, except for right here, this road right here is going to create an intersection and a light right here. So to get to this property, you're going to have to go through this residential portion, or I guess the city can choose what it wants to do as a separate application, but it's all kind of interconnected. If we wanted to stick to our general plan, we could require commercial, but this is pretty shallow. So it would be, you know, we're not going to be putting grocery stores, and there's just not enough room. So this might be enough room for like maybe a McDonald's or
A roll of
something,
real estate offices.
a row of something,
A Jack in the Box.
a row of Jack in the Boxes.
Just one's fine. Thank you.
So, so this is what West Point and staff talked about. So this would enable him to include that little triangle in, and then it would go along the center line of 193 and this golf course property, which Snyder's Bluff, I mean, it's all in West Point except for that, whatever hole that is. And then this is a power line corridor, and then they own and maintain a trail you probably walked on, and then there's a power line corridor that goes along the trail. So the actual developable acreage that we'd be giving away is probably similar to what they'd be giving us. But is the bottom line, you know, we have a good working relationship with West Point. We don't want to get into any sort of turf war or anything. So what they're asking, I think, is reasonable. And so we have lots of scenarios that we can evaluate. You know, I've sketched out a lot of different ones. I don't know if you want to get into it or not, but the different merits of where the boundary goes. But just understand that if we try to tweak it, we just don't want West Point to think that we're trying to play hardball.
Okay, so I get what you're saying, that the power corridor really doesn't matter. But I just wondered why the boundary didn't just go straight down the golf course, so that what's in the golf course is them, and because I have no problem giving them the golf course property.
Yeah,
But
so
it's just kind of odd that we don't or that we adjusted any further than that.
yeah, there's lots of scenarios. I mean,
What
this
is
is
E?
this
Middle, bottom.
middle bottom. Okay, sorry, I know the alphabet.
I believe it.
Thanks. So this one would go down the middle of the West Davis corridor, and for now it's gonna go over to here, but this will eventually keep going to the north along
Right.
here. So it basically just goes along the middle of that, and then it hits the bottom of the golf course and cuts over.
I'm a big fan of identifiable solid
Yeah.
lines like that. And it just seems more precise.
Well, the other one is following a road.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but
this one would just be the middle line, center line of the road.
It'd almost be more identifiable.
But we would be
if it
giving
follows the
away
road.
yeah,
a lot of developable acreage and potential sales tax
Yeah,
revenue.
not good.
Yeah, I don't think we need that one.
no.
But I mean, the baseline, this is what the guy is asking for.
Is that
But
we
I don't
include
think
that.
West Point's gonna give it up unless
They get something.
They really have no reason to.
they have no reason. And we don't have to do this either. I mean, we could just wait until West Davis corridor is built and see what's left. But we have an applicant that's requesting it now, so he
Or we could just recognize it as an independent city and move in as a peacekeeping mission.
yes.
A special.
I was a negotiator in the army, man. Let's do this.
All right, so,
So what do you think what's the most ideal?
so why not B or E, or, I mean, looks,
So
Yeah.
B would be telling West Point, like, hey, there might be something here. We want to reserve that. And that would be like a counter offer to them. And like I said, I think we just want to be careful politically. We don't want to, we just don't want it to feel like a turf war.
Not dying.
We're
on this
neighbors.
hill.
But we want to be fair too. So-
Well,
Affair.
but 13 acres for 1 acre is a pretty good deal.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they're getting, not
Yeah,
that
if you
we
look
get
at it that
anything out
way.
of the golf course, but that's a pretty good chunk of.
Well, I
of
actually want to
developed
know
Retail space.
because that golf course is, I've heard rumors he's thought about
Turning it into
excavating
development.
or turning that over for
Yeah,
property, and
Gonna be next to an exit.
I know.
Yeah.
They
And
just
so-
bought that place right across from West Point Elementary, didn't they? All those houses and stuff, and they ripped down all that stuff in their building. So, they own that property. Same people that own the golf course.
And so what I need to know is, because 1 acre for 13 is a freaking good deal. Get it while you can.
Unless it's like landlocked or something.
But yeah, this is right by an exit. This is land that could be developed in the future. I've heard rumors that he doesn't once this freeway comes in, he's looking at
getting out.
getting
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, the golf course could redevelop. Let me go back to this image right here. So with UDOT, we know what the access is going to be like. So there'll be a full movement intersection here.
Mhm.
And then right here, only on the north side, they'll be right in, right out. So this
It's actually
access
developable.
is developable, but it's not good.
It's not great.
Retail would want
Gas
full
station.
movement, but you might, yeah.
But that stoplight right there, which way is the other side of the road gonna go?
So you'll be able to go, this will probably depend on how this develops, but there'll probably be a road.
Right to that
comes in.
property that we're giving away? Or thinking about giving away?
Well, there's this power line corridor right here, so, but there could be some sort of, yeah. I'm not debating that
So-
that's probably developed.
They're not they won't put it
That
into
little
that.
corner that's not
Power line
our
corridor.
city, is that more than an acre? Can't be.
It's
Which-
1.3
That little
or
The low one,
This?
yeah,
That's 1.33.
1.33.
And it
So we
was,
can just tell the developer, hey, we don't want to do anything.
say we're willing to pull the 1.3 in, but I'm not willing to give up 13 acres of what will be prime land. And like I say, I'm not trying to get in a pissing match here, but I do owe an obligation to the taxpayers who this is a potential revenue source that could offset a lot of taxes for the city.
I would be good with option E. I would be good with,
Yeah.
yeah,
Option E doesn't buy you anything.
yeah, it does.
It
It
gets
gives me the property north of that exit too. So you give up all of the golf course, but you get the other side of the freeway too.
If you're looking at developable sites, there's really only three little spaces that.
It's those
could
little
have something.
triangle.
That one, that one, that one.
pieces
This
that
is,
are-
well, I mean, golf course could
Say
redevelop,
they're-
so
right.
I guess that could be, then this is power course, you can't build
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
And then
But
this
I'd be
is
good with
under
that
freeway.
because that gives us something for what we give them.
It looks more equal. Well, I
It
mean,
does look
With,
more
with it
equal.
all, with it all being undeveloped, your financially, your safest bet is to do nothing.
Well, the safest bet is to do A.
West Point
Give them-
hasn't agreed to A though.
Which
What
is,
happened?
yeah,
Probably won't.
yeah, which is if they're willing to, assuming they're willing
Sure.
to do
You
that.
can all.
They haven't
all
agreed to
lose.
anything yet either. Staff has
Well, they don't,
gave us input.
they
that-
give up an acre.
What-
They would
what
have,
do
that's a
you
lot
think?
of
No, I'm
work to
saying,
develop.
yeah, 100% our way though. is what-
and how did they feel about E?
Yeah, who did we send to this poker table? Because I'm afraid that we were.
Were we
Yeah,
playing
we'll take
Texas
anything.
Hold'em or what were we doing here?
Yeah, it was just.
It wasn't
Black
a
card
poker
draw.
table.
Yeah.
Well, and in the past, when we've done a boundary adjustment, we did a joint set, we've only done the one with Clearfield, but we did the joint session with the Clearfield Council and you guys. And so that's an option too, if,
Yeah, I talked
because
to
yeah,
them.
like Lori
Yeah.
and Noah said, it really was just brainstorming when we met.
That's a good idea.
So I can support A, or I could get behind E, but I still feel like E is still a loss to Syracuse because I really don't think that, I think that golf course is.
Yeah,
finding its
but
time.
you can't, when you're working, that's not how compromise works, my man. Like, we're gonna have some sort of a little bit of a loss if they're experiencing a little bit of loss too.
What he's saying is it's a bigger loss than a gain.
I mean, it's not really,
Option,
Potentially.
I could get
option
behind,
G is nothing.
yeah, I could get behind E only because it kind of says, okay, you've got something developed that you're already getting all the rewards for. Give us the whatever that's left. I'm okay with that,
and we'll
but
do what we can with it.
What
make it
property
work.
tax do we get from that 13 acres?
not much.
I mean, it's a,
We get any,
well, you'd have to.
Well,
It's
big
land in
ground.
the city that someone
but
owns.
it's an establishment that's based out of West Point,
Doesn't
so.
matter.
You might get some
How's their
property tax. I
accounting
think their
for
point of sales all at the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So you would get property tax on the land, which
On the
is,
one-
which is a farm.
one hole.
It's probably minimal.
But
$1,000 a
it's
year.
it's the
1/18.
So it's a big piece of property on E for them, and then it gives us those three kind of strategic nodes.
Yeah.
on that
Right.
It seems
off-ramp.
more
So
fair
That, to me, that seems the most equitable as well.
for both
yeah. I think
Yeah.
I
parties
could
involved. Yeah.
I could only agree to either A or E.
Agree.
Yeah.
If they're
I like
willing to-
E.
if
I
they're willing to
think-
just
it
adjust the
just-
boundary
it
to
just
give us
gives
that
both
piece, that's great.
parties Something that's
It's
beneficial
fairly
to them.
equal. I don't know what the
Yeah.
exact acreage is, but it seems like it's fairly equal.
What are you foreseeing as their response, or what, I can see kind of some like, I don't know if that's gonna work. What is the, I mean, if they're kind of getting like for like in size of property, and it's just a boundary adjustment, it's not like they
And they're
own the
getting
property.
developed property, and we're getting agricultural land.
Yeah, so
I just want to
mean,
foresee what the,
three little nodes, I mean, this is probably a couple homes, couple townhomes. This is maybe a gas station. This is maybe a little fast food. This, if it redevelops, might be some homes, I guess.
13 acres.
So,
of
so
homes.
that's probably,
Yeah, so
Benefits
that's like
us
at
pretty
least 30
well.
homes.
Yeah, so if those are the chips that you're bargaining.
But
with.
the thing is, it's not gonna be homes right off a freeway exit. That will go commercial.
So this
Or
option
go
would
It's all
be,
speculation.
multifamily.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Speculation.
going through,
Could be a golf course.
Could be a golf course.
whatever exit 4 is up over there.
yeah, so this option E is like, you give me a gas station and a townhome and I'll raise you 30 single-family home. I'll give you 30 single-family homes.
It's like Monopoly, but
So
real life.
I think Cassie's idea is great. You probably need to get the same room with the people who actually make the decision.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about it. But like I said, I think the no action option, in my eyes, if there's gonna be conflict, we don't really gain much by having another townhome. Like, it's not really worth it.
Right. I think if they were, I think we ought to at least ask them before we have a big joint meeting and we all get in there and start discussing this and run the risk of,
You know,
of conflict, burning bridges.
all right, let me just throw this out
I
there
could
because
throw it back to him.
I see Mayor, I see Brian, what's his last name? I just, because it's brand
No,
new.
I want to say Craythorne. but-
But it's not. No, it's Brian. I see Brian. He's newly appointed to the sewer board and I see him at COG. I could just ask him what they're thinking and just get an informal, see if what they've thought about this. And because if he says, oh yeah, we're like hardcore on this, we're not giving up anything. Then I come back and we say, all right, we know where they're done. Yeah, we're done.
Do they have this on an agenda over there too?
They haven't had it on the agenda yet, but I know that
Probably
they're
waiting.
planning soon.
I thought they were waiting for us to maybe like just float an idea.
Yeah, I guess if I'm going to do anything, it has to be at least equitable for me, for the city.
How fun is that to meet with another city council all at once, though, you know? Like, what's up, guys? I'm all for that.
I do
Interesting
know
one.
after reviewing their general plan, West Point's general plan, their zoning, they're planning on, if you can see the mouse, I guess on either of the options, they're planning on this all to be general commercial. And they're planning on this to be general commercial. They're planning on this to be general commercial. So they're,
What is the golf course zoned as on their general plan?
tell you,
So
Sounds like they have the same interest in it that we do.
Mayor Vincent spent 10 years on their planning commission, but's never been on the council. So he's new like me. And
Did you find, was that his last name?
yeah, Vincent.
Brian Vincent?
Mhm. He's a nice guy. I get along with him well.
You're working faster than your laptop.
oh, this is not the right one. As soon as it opens.
Should we all avert our eyes?
Close your eyes. Good thing nobody's watching on Zoom. That's the right one.
The good thing it's not being recorded.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah,
Do we need to involve HR?
probably.
Cut sling low.
Okay, so I put their general plan in this other packet. Okay, so here's.
What are you looking for?
Yeah, but I.
Oh, you got it?
Nice. Robert to the rescue.
Robert to the rescue.
She's tired.
This is their current zoning, and then this is their general plan. So if you look, this is the little piece that the developer wants.
They also thought it would be.
But their golf course is just general planned as open space.
Yeah, but see, most of that we're
Yeah, I
talking
get you.
about, if we go follow the road, most of it's taken up by the exit. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just really very little there to get back. And we're
Yeah, I
willing to
agree.
give them up a significant piece if it ever changes use. That's why I would stick with the plan of go down the road. Just go down the road to the golf course and go straight over. And give them back the golf course. I don't even know if we have to give them back the power corridor, but it won't matter because.
You're talking E?
Oh, I think you put under that as cattle.
Well, he's saying E, but you move the line to the golf course, the dotted line.
I mean, that's
Or
what
the
makes
power line
sense to me,
corridor, I
but
think that's-
The
I
only
don't
reason
care.
is
Well, yeah.
Either way,
fight
it's
over
protected.
power
Although we have a
corridors.
new farmer on our-
The only reason it's down from the
They
golf
can
course a
go,
little bit is because they have a trail.
Okay,
They
so
own
it's on the
routes.
other side of the trail.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
that's the
where it
only
is
thing you can
now.
use
Yeah.
it for. A lot
But
of
follow
people
the
that are
road
using
is
their
what I'm
horse
saying,
properties
because that's
are renting
A
it
really
from
definable
power
boundary.
companies. Because that's like.
Oh,
remember,
so you're
there's
saying
schools that want to
that
rent
line
that
right
area
there?
Yeah.
for
Okay.
growing crops
see what
for
you're saying.
gardening.
The UDOT right away.
And the power
Yeah.
companies are starting to let them.
Yeah, follow that. and
It's
then-
crazy what they're allowing underneath those power lines now. Like they're, as long as
Okay.
people
We're
don't live
gonna
under
find
them.
out later.
So I can
Yeah.
shoot this back to the staff and just say, hey, we were actually thinking something more like this.
Yeah, and if they say, go hug a root, within
Then, well, you know,
Say
hug it with a bow.
Yeah, what do you guys think about A? Just leave everything the same and just.
I'm also good with A. A is my preferred. And
Okay.
that's the smallest amount of change.
Yeah, but I don't think they're gonna go for it.
I don't know why they wouldn't, because like to your point, they're gonna be like, are we really gonna argue over one townhome?
Yeah,
So I would say A is our going in approach. E is if that's unacceptable.
I agree with that.
okay. What about the other two?
You mean other four?
No, well.
The other two
she just
people.
said- She just
Oh.
said she agrees with you.
Got it.
There's not just us here.
I thought you meant the other player.
Selfish.
So I'm thinking Lisa
Yeah.
and Seth. I did not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're,
A and
to
E.
me, they're kind of either one. Both
Yeah.
are fine for me.
Okay,
If they want to let it go, we'll take it. Otherwise, we compromise. That's what people do.
you know, the reason I lean towards E is I think the land is fairly equal and you.
But a lot of it is under the road.
Yeah,
So it doesn't really benefit you, but
I mean,
Well,
but
but
like
it's
if they
fairly
put like what
equal
you said,
and-
one little gas station and maybe like a fast food, that would be about the same amount. And Jack in the Box, I'm telling you, it's like in and out. We have a lot anyhow. It'd be about as much as 30 houses, you know?
Okay, let's move on to planning items, self-initiated discussion, potential amendments to Syracuse City zones pertaining to mixed use. This is where you're going to tell Noah the things you'd like to see discussed in mixed use changes.
All right.
Hope you all brought your list.
Yep, I've got the pencil sharpened here. Last time, I remember we talked about removing the picture.
My list is in the packet.
Your list is in the packet.
It's what you presented.
Perfect.
So I'm good.
Okay. Adjusting commercial residential ratio, removing the partner site option, restricting the zone to be located along state highways, tightening the distance for inland open space fee receiving sites, increasing the buffer landscaping requirements, ensuring proper long-term maintenance, and adding water-wise landscaping requirements.
Do any of these, our house bills affect this?
It's a good question.
I think it could.
Yeah, because there was some mixed use
Yeah.
stuff going on in
There
there.
was some.
only if we want to
affordable
provide
housing.
incentives.
Incentives.
That's it?
Incentives for retail or
I don't-
requiring moderate income.
Yeah, I don't think we're currently,
There was a lot of
Maybe you got-
bills about
I know.
income housing. and
but
stuff
I don't think we're
about-
currently offering incentives for housing units.
And we don't
I just
require
remember some of
moderate
the
income at
legislative
all.
session was really
Yeah.
pushing.
Right.
Yeah.
Requiring an increase in
In
mixed use development,
yeah.
having an increase in residential.
Can we look into that?
Affordable housing.
There was, they have spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
One of the strategies in our moderate income housing plan is to create a mixed use zone, which we did.
We'll
So
just
we
keep
can,
doing it.
and I don't know if that goes into the ongoing reporting of like,
One down,
if
four to
you
go.
like cross something out, do we get credit for years and years and years for it? You gotta move on to the next.
Our strategy was to revise our mixed use zone.
Well,
Check, check.
what you're saying, we redid this, so checks new,
A new check.
a new check.
Yes.
Check it again.
Okay,
So was
so
anything passed? Do we know if anything was passed?
That's gonna
then
affect
that
this,
says
yeah.
That we had to have a certain number? No, Paul says no.
So. Well, I'll let you finish and then I'll.
I'm done. I didn't really put specific red lines, but we could start putting rubber to the road.
So the accessory dwellings and stuff like that.
That doesn't affect this.
It doesn't affect
Yeah.
this zone.
They're not permitted in this zone.
I still think that I'm okay with a partner site. I think that gives them the ability to do something like a hotel nearby. I think that's a benefit to the community. There's some argument that if you're gonna do that, just make it commercial, but I'm using mixed use to bring in commercial. And so I do think there is a spot for a partner site. So
And in there, does it say to review eliminating partner site options?
that's what it says.
Yeah, I don't think the intent was necessarily to eliminate it, but it was to evaluate distances and some of the other.
Okay, I can.
And if it's already existing, or if it was newer, if it's taking an old building that's dead.
Well, the critique is that they created their own partner site off-site. So they own land and then they carved out a piece of their own land and said, this is now
This is
our
our partner
off-site
site, which
partner
allowed them
to
do.
skirt the mixed use.
I think
Architectural
calling it mixed
standards
use
and
is
all
kind of sketchy at that point if it's too far apart.
I think that's the
I understand if
loophole.
it's adjacent, but if it's more than a mile apart, is it really mixed?
I think right now the restriction
Is quarter.
is quarter mile.
Right, but I think the point,
Yeah.
the suggestion was that we might just relinquish that and just say any partner site.
No, I
No,
would think
I don't think that
that's,
was our intention.
yeah, no, I don't
Okay.
think so.
I think it was more just to
Alright.
see if,
Okay.
yeah.
You gotta be within a certain distance. Walking distance is what the main thing is, right? Yeah, for mixed use, they gotta be in walking distance.
So
To serve that area.
Yeah,
you already have the locations. I liked most of these. I think they're good. One thing I wanted to add in is I'm hearing the hospital is running into a lot of issues with the mixed use zone. And I would actually like to remove some of those obstacles if we can while we're doing this.
So some of the obstacles that they're running into, I would be concerned about putting them in the mixed use zone or not having them there.
So I haven't seen the
But-
list. That's what that's
Okay,
the
so one of the
thing.
ones that was brought up in their last meeting was or in the last planning commission, was that the building would be more than 200 feet in one direction as a commercial building. And I think about it and I think the only way that would apply is to a hospital. I don't think you want a mixed use where you have one building that's more than 200 feet long.
How long is a Costco?
Probably longer, 200.
So if I could use mixed use to bring a Costco, right now we couldn't do it.
You could,
How
but
on
just
earth
you have
would
to
you-
write an exception through the development.
Costco would, yeah.
So I guess what we're saying is we don't want any big
I'd
buildings
say
with our
that's
mixed
probably about
use.
300 by 400.
Is it
that
really
was
mixed
the-
use at that point? I mean, I kind of asked the question if this is even mixed use. I get what they're asking for. They're asking for both to be passed at the same time under one zone. I kind of threw out the suggestion that why don't we just agree to pass them as at the same time so that they're not getting one without the other. But
Can we keep the discussion around the text of the amendment?
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
So
sorry.
personally, I think what we should do is for the business portion, for the commercial portion of the mixed use, the commercial zoning should apply.
Including architectural
Architectural
standards.
Meaning, let it be
everything.
whatever it is, if it's a normal commercial use,
Sure.
no different restrictions for mixed use. I agree.
Why are we overcomplicating this?
Well, because, so
Because we
we
want it
always
to
go back
look
to the same
More
scenario.
walkable.
What is mixed use?
What are we
Is a
trying to
Burger
accomplish?
King with an apartment complex behind it mixed use? If no, is that,
But is it Smith's
is it
and
Costco
Culver's
with
and all that with apartments next to it? I would say, yeah.
multifamily behind it?
so
what
vertical mixed
what's
use,
that?
horizontal
It-
mixed use? We said that we're okay with horizontal mixed use as long as the commercial still kind of looked like the town center. And you guys will start seeing as these buildings are taking shape along Antelope, that the architectural details and stuff make it feel more like a village or a main street kind of thing. So if we're still going, and it probably depends on context, because like up by 193, it's maybe more highway commercial style, but right on Antelope in our town center,
I hate the
probably
buildings
want-
against the sidewalk.
yeah, I know.
Okay, just as long as you're clear.
Yeah, how do you expect to widen roads when they're only like 10,
You can't.
20
You
feet?
can't.
Exactly, yeah.
And
like,
so I
that's-
don't like this.
That's not,
So-
yeah, that needs,
Our whole
They're gonna be
ordinance
ripping
is
down a lot of
based
stuff.
around building a product that you just said you don't like. So if we don't like that product,
Well,
we either need to not use the zone or modify it, or, Euclidean zoning of having a zone for each use, like the mayor was suggesting, you can have a zone that allows multifamily, And then you can have a zone that allows commercial and you can put whatever standards. It's like, we're kind of lumping it all into this thing to create this Main Street aesthetic.
I would like to reduce the restrictions of commercial within the mixed use zone to allow for someone to build a Costco or an RC Willie, or
You would never
Pick
use
your-
mixed use for that.
I absolutely would if
Why?
it got me, if it
How?
got me.
How?
So these are all larger square footage items. So maybe
Yeah.
we were talking about, if you're bringing in a big ticket, we'll let you, we'll give you a pass on the.
Then why restrict it?
Yeah, so are we?
For developers
are we
who wanna
saying that
build
we
a
want
bunch
the
of-
mixed use to not look a certain way, but it can be
So
just judged according to what their presentation
now,
is?
I'm saying this,
We can
that
do that now.
this would only apply to the commercial portion. So the residential still has to obey all of those. It can be up against the road and it can have, I'm not saying we're going to change the residential portion of this zone. But for the commercial portion of this zone, I'm okay giving them a little more leeway than we do currently.
As in what? Like what kind of leeway?
As in
Well, the length of
removing
the
the
domains.
restriction of 200 feet or.
Okay, I would agree with that. I think you should be able to have something longer, like.
I
Okay,
agree.
and I will do this in a way that I know. So if you have a horse arena, an indoor horse arena, at minimum, it's 200 by 300 feet long, at minimum. So if you want to build an equine area and then put some retail around it where people can shop while they're out there, you've already maxed that out. So I get what you're saying there, but as long as we're not adding a whole.
I
so
also
people can do the house.
want to make sure drive-throughs are allowed in our mixed use.
They are currently.
Then why did we have to carve out a portion of commercial?
That was the architectural issues on that piece.
I think I'm talking about-
It was
Where
because,
the-
it was
Where
because,
the
the-
road was.
it was because the
Yeah.
road went between the
drive-through,
sidewalk and the
walking,
building.
uh-huh.
I'm,
And I'm okay with that.
As,
Okay,
as
but-
you're speaking, I'm starting to get some ideas because the common things that the commercial doesn't like is the setback. They don't like the location of the door to
Mhm.
face the road. They want to.
And that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inside.
I hate that. I hate seeing the
Parking
chop
lot.
saw in the back of, I love Ruckus, but the fact that we have a glass door facing the road, that's always a storage room.
Yeah,
So that one, and then a chamfered edge with the tower feature. The Briggs North is actually still gonna do that, so you have to see if that, you think that's still important on the corner. But those
I
are,
have
those
no
are the
issues
main,
with that.
main things, and we
I
can take
love
those
that.
out of the commercial standards.
I'm okay with that. I like making it look nice.
Mhm.
But what I don't want to do is restrict the functionality of
uniformities
commercial
that
because
goes
I want
together.
there to be drive-throughs in whatever form, because drive-throughs are kind of a big deal for a lot of people,
they're so
Especially
confusing.
families.
especially families. So
Yeah.
we need to make sure that the restrictions allow, and I get that you won't be able to walk from the sidewalk to the door, but you know what? Most people are driving and parking anyway. And so
Yeah,
unless you're in the city center, I think most people are driving. And so we need to remove those restrictions for drive-throughs. I'm okay with longer commercial buildings.
so there shouldn't, I mean, drive-throughs should be completely acceptable as long as there's a way for them to safely get through the park. It's about safety. It's like if they're walking, there's no reason not to allow drive-through as long as we have a way for them to safely get through. Like at Wendy's usually has like an actual crosswalk that goes from the sidewalk over to the door at a lot of them. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but
Yeah,
something that makes it to where it's a visually like this is where people are gonna cross right in front of you, in front of a car. You know,
And,
yeah,
and honestly, even
a few
if
extra
someone
safety
did get-
procedures wouldn't hurt, you know,
I'll call someone got hit, they're usually going like half a mile an hour.
through drive-through.
And
yeah.
so I know next to my work, there is an Apollo that is very popular. And to get to the door, you walk through the drive-through.
Yeah.
And I've never felt threatened.
It almost sounds
You
like,
walk through the
it almost
drive-through
sounds like you
doors.
might want like another tool. If the existing one works in some context at all, like even in town center, then it almost sounds like you need like
An additional tool.
an
yeah.
MXD
Outside
two
of- uh-huh.
or something.
I'm just saying we allow
That's-
for,
That's actually a good
I
idea.
don't want to make another zone.
Can we
count that in our
plan?
Well, let me
But
throw
maybe
out
a
your own
different
words here,
scenario.
my
It's gonna be
friend,
like
'cause,
MXD 22.
you know, you reminded us several
Like
times
5-0.
not to try to make one zone cover everything. There's a purpose to the zone. Let's not try to incorporate every possible use in one zone.
Yeah, where is
I'm not trying to do every possible use. I'm just saying, let's remove the obstacles to a large business or a
I would
business that
agree
wants to
with that,
drive
like that
through.
200-foot thing, that's, I would agree with that.
So West Point, our sister city to the north, they have a zone called R20. And that's what they used in the Smiths development for the residential. And then they had a commercial zone for the actual Smiths. What you're describing would be way easier to do a commercial zone for the commercial and a residential zone for the residential.
I don't want a apartments only zone.
Has to be a package deal.
Has to be a package deal.
So you don't want apartments at all without,
Well, long ago, we talked about that, and I think that was kind of the negotiation was if we're gonna bring apartments in, it had to be incentivizing us to bring some commercial in, and that's. where
I
the
could
married
build
with the
apartments
MXD.
all day
We'll
long
never
in
have
the
an
city,
issue.
and while apartments do have their benefits, I would like to use them as a tool to bring more commercial into the city. Because otherwise you'll see apartment, that zone will be your most popular
There's no
zone
shortage of
from
demand.
If you
here
look
on.
at Clearfield, they have more apartments than they have residents almost. And it's a different city. It
Although the
does
apartments are
create,
some of the nicer parts of the city.
So say you have.
and some of the worst, because it depends
newer,
on
I
which
mean,
one,
yeah,
yes.
the newer ones, yeah.
Newer ones
So-
are some of the nicer parts, and yet their older ones are some of the worst parts of the city.
So
But
Brody, what were you saying about
I think we have
having
enough
a
apartments
mixed use
coming in to
part
last us a
two,
minute.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea is kind of
I
like they
think
have
so.
an R1 and an R2. They're both
Mhm.
residential. It's just a different kind, different standards. You could just have a different kind of mixed use.
Call it a vertical mixed use and a horizontal
So
mixed
we
use.
have the ability to say
I
no
like
to
that.
apartments, right? I mean, that's
Anytime.
at any
Yeah,
time.
any
So
legislative decision making
why, I understand why you want to use them as a tool, but if someone wants to develop apartments and they don't have any familiarity with bringing any of the other stuff with it, or people want to do this and don't have any familiarity with bringing the other stuff in it, you kind of put them in a crappy
Well,
spot.
they're typically coming
So-
with a competent partner.
Yeah, well, but-
We've had no
the-
shortage of applications.
Okay.
No, finish what you're saying.
I just, I
wanna hear
don't,
the end.
I agree with West Point. I think putting it together in one big lump just kind of makes it overwhelmingly ridiculously difficult.
See, they had the Smiths before imagine someone
Yeah.
just put up all those apartments in a field and said, I'd like to build where Smiths is too.
Okay, well
They
then.
never would have had a Smiths.
When we build Smiths and they say, well, then put apartments next to it, like if
That's what
they
we're
got the
doing.
Smiths first, so why do we need it mixed then?
But to
Why
be
don't we
clear,
invite the
that
business first
Smiths
and then?
couldn't be built in our current mixed use.
We can.
That's right.
and do- I
Right.
mean, that would be just
So is what you could do,
commercial.
say
It's
you have
when they
a,
Yeah.
want to change commercial to add apartments. They always are wanting to.
Yeah, they always want to take our commercial zones and say, let me just build
Well, then just
apartments.
say no.
They rent
No, it's
fast,
commercial.
which they do, but then we don't have the commercial spaces. So we're trying to say, let's take the most appealing part of the commercial space, the road access and the visual, and at least give me commercial there.
So like you said, we could say no. Why wouldn't we just say no? No, this is commercial. We've got this.
Because again,
designated
there's not
commercial.
the
So why would I
demand for
create a zone I'm
commercial.
always gonna say no to?
So that's why we've had kind of 1700's been basically blighted for years, just growing weeds because they won't. The
Commercial's
commercial.
not
And now we're
you
growing
know,
apartments and where's the,
But they're.
But
they
there's
are
commercial
coming
with every
with
single one of
commercial.
those.
Yeah, every one of them has.
We use it
And
as a
may
tool
look-
to get
It looks like
commercial.
apartments, but they're all commercial
yeah,
in
it
front
sure
of it.
does.
But every one of them
But
is commercial.
if we
with
had
it.
just done an
But is
apartment
it
zone,
just
there would be no
commercial
commercial. there.
building or is it actually full commercial already?
They're
Is
not-
it commercial
So
space?
every single one
Like
of
a
those
Costco would
zones.
be full commercial
So
or
most of
a
the-
hospital would
Like
be full commercial. Is it just space like over here that's still empty?
So
Or,
we've tried this though. I mean, there's like years and years and years of that approach
They
you're talking
won't-
about.
they won't
that They
build
just
it.
have not come. And that's where we had to start negotiating and coming closer to the table and saying, here's what we have to offer. Now you bring us a project that meets ours and your needs. And now we're talking about how do we go, okay, we saw what that got us. It was far this way.
so is this gonna be
Now let's
more
meet them in a-
commercial space that's empty or is it already
See,
reserved and
that's the
full?
point,
That's
right?
the-
That's what I'm
the
asking,
biggest
because
issue,
we have
Ken.
3 places over here by the,
You're less likely to
what
have
is
them
that?
vacant now.
The theater that one
Yeah.
finally just got moved into. So we're gonna have a bunch of empty
You got a bunch of-
retail
And
space with a
that's
whole
the
bunch of
biggest-
housing?
That's the big issue because.
So if it's not
what we're-
full
What
retail,
we're
then-
saying to them is you're at risk of not filling your space. So we don't, I never
don't
want
want
them
people
to
building
come
this
in
big
and
commercial.
say, I'm putting millions of dollars into this. I may never have a renter. And that's a terrible place that they're put in. So that's why we want it to be viable. And that's why we have to be really careful not to say, we're requiring this massive amount of commercial space that you may not fill.
That's
Because
why
then
the
we end up
ratio
with
is
black
where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
windows.
So the other item, so are there any other, I'll phrase it this way, are there any other issues that have received frequent complaints?
I don't know that we've had that as a frequent complaint. It's just a one-time. complaint.
Well, the drive-through has been brought up.
Okay,
several
but the
times.
size of the building
And
is
also-
only a one-time complaint.
Okay,
But also out of the planning commission, that was one of their very first, if you read the
Right.
report I gave last year sometime, the
Mhm.
first thing they said was the building length was one of the
Yeah.
big things, and everybody's going like, I mean, I could see, and they go, well, there's this example or that example, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
do we need to come up with examples, or do we need to just say, remove it?
I would
and
remove that to 200 feet.
But I think that
For
goes
commercial, I
into a
support that.
mixed
For
use
commercial.
part
For
too.
commercial, yeah.
only.
For
You don't want a
commercial.
Yeah, we don't want any
Agree with that.
L-shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of these comments I'm
commercial.
saying here are only for the commercial. I don't want drive-through apartments either.
Where are you trying to move us?
So just in that zone,
I don't
yeah,
wanna answer
drive-throughs. The
We're
200
hitting another
feet,
country right now, you know that, right?
The other item that we did talk about that has been requested by the planning commission is they would like to look at the ratio as well. I wouldn't mind increasing the ratio. The ratio has shown that it's a popular thing as far as if we can get a little more
So you
commercial.
want to be miserable and people not want to do it, then we know we hit the sweet spot.
Well, I think you come out there with your elbow
Yeah.
a little bit more, and then you go, okay.
Yeah,
now let's
I'm
dial-
not saying we quadruple it. I'm saying what we have now works and I've liked what we're getting. But I wouldn't mind a little bit more. So I would like them to look and see. I know that they've specifically requested they would like to look at the ratio and I'm willing
Well,
to give them
And
that.
right now it's
All
a
right,
tiered
so I would
approach
point
based on the
out
height
that
you get.
I would point out that some of the ones that at least you've expressed more appeal for had well beyond the ratio.
Fair.
And the ones that had just the bare minimum had seemed to be less appealing, at least to me, and you'd expressed the same. So I don't think the ratio is, I don't think that we need to say, well, we have to maintain that ratio because we have seen people do it with a higher ratio and it's had a very appealing product.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that ratio could be increased and
And we'd still get the
plenty of
people-
applications.
Yeah, because we have.
Well, and I think
So-
if you're helping the commercial use out with, by not giving them restrictions on the kinds of tenants they can get, that would
Mhm.
help them.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I think if you put a drive-through in the city, it would be full.
And I think just
I
by-
think things like that.
just the evidence of the applications coming in is very clear that the ratio works just fine. So
Yes.
we need to, now we do need to increase it to some extent where we go, okay, let's slow this a little bit and figure out what's tenable for businesses and what makes sense.
We
for
need a
them.
good ice cream shop too.
So currently,
I'm for that.
I was gonna say, so
Same parking
process
lot.
wise, this has to go to planning commission next, right? Not to a one. So what would you think if we moved this on to planning commission to get their feedback before we take it up one more time?
Well, yeah,
I'm ready
that's,
for it.
I think
Because
the whole
we've-
point of this.
We've
was
taken a
to-
lot
Yeah.
of things and put into it. And
Okay.
so let's get their feedback and then we'll take it up again.
yeah, I got some good direction and some ideas based off our conversation. I was gonna say our current ratio is 36 square feet for a 3-story building per 1,000 square feet. The upcoming project we have proposed for rezone is proposing 17,000 square feet of commercial, 300 units. That's roughly 56 square feet of commercial per 1,000. So
That's awesome.
if
It's a
we
lot
said
higher.
that's the new bar, we could. move
Which
it
one
from
is that?
36
Sorry,
We do
which-
that.
To the hospital.
Okay.
We haven't reviewed it yet, though.
But you still, I mean, if you went up to 40 something or 50 some, what, in that zone, it's doable. And it's not impossible. But also look at the one on Doll Lane has a much higher commercial element, though it may be.
Once they build
yeah,
that.
Once they build it.
office, it would be awesome.
So it's again, a higher one. So.
Yeah, and that application might be more feasible to do that because it's such a big property.
Yeah.
True.
Hey, one other thought I was thinking about, and I forgot to put this down, was just about if we could get maybe some thoughts on the certificate of occupancies that are granted. We were always kind of, it feels like every project we're kind of deciding, okay, do we give them this for the last building? Do we, if we get any
Build
kind
the
of.
commercial.
Yeah, it's always
time.
like,
I think if
we get some sort of direction on that.
would you like to try and put commercial, the commercial has to be completed?
No,
before
I don't
certificate
know
of
that. I just
occupancy?
don't know that we want to like decide it every single project. It
Yeah.
feels like every project we're going, well, if you do this building here,
Just
now you get.
Set the policy.
Yeah, just set
Yeah.
a standard and then we can use the development agreement out of it
That'd
if
be
it's
great
like
to have
completely
that.
impossible.
So
but-
maybe say 50%, you have to have the commercial
Yeah, I
done
don't know
before
what the-
50%.
Yeah, I don't know what the number is,
Don't know
but
what
yeah.
the magic number is, but get a
Thought we
policy.
would have
Something
to
that-
address it
I
every
think it's
time
a
on
good
fluid
idea.
of a
It feels like we're always going
understanding.
back to
Yeah.
it.
No, it's a good idea.
Because remember, we started with saying you got to build the commercial first.
Yeah, and everybody's like,
We're
we're not
like,
doing
"Oh,
this."
I can't do that.
Whose wallet
Do
are you
they have,
using?
is there like
Yeah.
stipulations on what type of commercial? Is it just kind of?
There are some uses that are not available right now, which is what we're gonna, I think,
Not
industrial.
like the development agreement already does not, or is gonna allow.
I don't know, like my idea of like
Like a
a,
hospital's not allowed,
to
right?
like.
Yeah.
what-
Yeah, we need to add a
retail and
hospital
stuff,
in.
like,
Nobody
I
ever
love
conceived of a
parking lot, like
hospital,
date
hotel.
nights,
Well,
like you
let's
can do a
be
bunch of different
serious.
things in one parking
Yeah.
Do you
lot.
think we're gonna get more than
And my
one
son and I
hospital?
do those all the time and I love them.
Well, what if they came in with
Those are
like,
the
yeah,
best
community
retail
clinics?
What if they
places
said
where
they
it's
did
like,
want to
you
do
know,
that?
parking lot, date
Okay,
night.
You know what I mean?
I would add in
Yeah, a little bit better.
hospital and hotel are allowable uses within a mixed use.
Yeah, and it's, the parking never really gets
Maybe
too
we
bad.
can, maybe we
also
can just
because
make it easier,
different
Noah,
things, you know?
because the language right now says, doesn't it say like these uses and no others? Couldn't we make it simpler by just saying, let them present a commercial plan for us?
Yeah, take out the and no
It
others.
says
Yeah.
no others, unless you amend it through the DA.
Yeah, it's like, so at
Yeah.
that point, why are we?
So
Maybe we
absolutely.
just need to.
I like options.
Options are
Because
good.
we've had two options that are good options. One of them I didn't love the location, but it's still a good thing for the city.
You still want to have some prohibited uses because you don't, then you might build an office and then it turns into a smoke shop or something like that.
It does give you control.
So I would rather than do the prohibited uses, go that route than.
But
but I-
no
but,
others.
Yeah,
Is that same
or is the
thing?
no others the blanket statement you
It's
use
basically
to
the same thing, yeah.
allow exceptions?
So you're saying adult services next to housing is not. good.
Not preferred.
No.
Well, that doesn't fit the commercial zone.
I feel like we don't even live in
If
that
it's
situation of a
industrial,
state,
and
you
you're
know?
saying
Like,
go
it's
to
not in
all,
this situation.
anything.
No, I didn't say go to anything. I said all commercial.
All right, I'm gonna move us on because I think that we do need to let planning commission take it up and we will talk about this again. So the Parks and Recreation Department quadrennial review is bumped to the next agenda.
Oh,
I know, it was a request and I honored it, so.
Yeah.
uh,
That was
So-
a nice trip for you though, eh? Yeah.
So L
Got you back
is
up.
introduction, first read proposed updates to emergency operations plan. A lot of this is based on what we've gone through and what we learned.
Yeah, so this is, so in your folder is the actual updated plan, and there's not a lot of substantive changes. We'll still run emergencies very much the same way. But in some of our trainings that we've done, we've kind of learned that we would like to have the plan be more user-friendly for whoever is in the EOC, because let's face it, if there is in certain disasters, not everybody who's assigned to the EOC is going to make it to the EOC. And so when you have your substitute show up,
the backup.
they can just plug and play with the plan and hurry and figure out what their duties are and keep going, rather than just kind of getting lost in this long wordy document. So the biggest changes we did was we kind of simplified it. We have some assistance in the Word document. You just have, I think, the PDF file. But in the Word document, we have assistance like pop-up explanations
That's a
for
great idea.
jargon.
They needed that for every city council member too that came in and thought that. Anyway.
No way, I want to hear this.
Well, just, I remember my first meeting with everybody and they were talking about franchises. And I said, so like Carl's Jr., is that what we're talking about?
That's
They're
what
like,
I would've
No, it would be utilities. And anyway, so I think there's a lot of wisdom in making sure that people know what the terms and
Enterprise
acronyms are.
fund.
That's
is the one we're
good.
looking for.
It was a safe space, no judgment in that meeting.
It's true.
So
Jack in the box.
So there's a focus more on response and recovery because pre-planning and mitigation, all that was addressed in the countywide pre-disaster mitigation plan. It doesn't need to be repeated in our EOP. The EOP is meant to be the document in play during an emergency, and the pre-planning is too late. And then we just updated all the key external and internal contact information,
including Tim Seeley,
so that it's accurate. So
Any other requests or comments for this document?
How, just a logistic question, how is it disseminated? Is it like if there's updates made or stuff like that, is that like a Dropbox thing or how to?
yeah, we'll put it in. So there's various things we'll do. We'll put it in our intranet, Teams,
Just thinking for the
email.
backup folks.
Is there a hard
whatever,
copy sitting in the EOC?
We'll
Well, we
print,
did,
we'll print
uh,
hard copy. Yes, there'll be.
Aaron
yeah,
will
in
give
the
you
EOC.
direction.
Aaron's got that down.
We just have.
I think you
like,
bring up a
them in
really
our
good-
backpacks in our office.
Yeah, you bring up a really good
Yes,
point.
our-
And that is the first thing you do in an emergency is where's the documentation?
Yeah.
So that we follow it.
Yeah, we never follow
No.
it in my office, ever, so, like never. And everybody's always like, what did we learn? And then we learn the same thing every time. We don't know where it's at. Nobody called the right people. Never works.
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, this stuff is always back burner, but we do trainings and we do
So in
try to
that,
improve each one.
what is the EOC or over in the police department, we need to put one of these in paper form and like one of those break in case of emergency.
Yeah.
Things.
Right
That's
next
just
to the fire
always there,
extinguisher.
right next to it.
I
Yeah.
have a
it's always there.
laminator, I'll laminate it for us.
Right. Anti-fire box.
And this is listed as a first read. If you're okay with it, we can put it on for adoption.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
have
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on because we have the luxury of having Paul give us open and public meetings training, which is required every year.
this.
Last
week.
And me, above
So
everyone else, I'm
sad.
excited to check this off my list of
Should
things.
have brought a
that I have to do for other
pillow.
things.
I look forward to this meeting.
This is like a
He
fun
came up with a
time.
pep in his step.
Paul always adds humor in, which makes it more bearable. But it's good information.
Righty, entertain us.
I'm not entertaining it'll be.
Beer dance.
Can you
Should
do
brought
it
popcorn.
again, but better?
This wasn't, come on, Steve, this is your department. That was your responsible.
Turn it off.
I'll give you $2 if you can keep it under 20 minutes. Is that ethical? Probably not. Now go ahead and train us on ethics.
That's another training we have to have now. Thank you. Next month, we'll be doing that.
Ethics and values.
Can you dramatically act it out instead
Yeah.
of PowerPoint? Maybe do some examples.
Even the computer doesn't want to do it.
This, I actually like this training. It's very informative.
Councils, that's why I just looked at Paul. He just does this. I can't do it. I'm like, Paul, just cut swing load for me. Tell me no.
Well, I can probably share my screen. I didn't work last week. Planning commission, but I worked today. Who knows?
Can you screen mirror?
Is this have airdrop on it? These TVs?
Yes.
It's funny how everything looks like
You can
it's
forward it
framed.
to your laptop.
Try Zoom first.
I'll try some.
Oh, and that EOC has horrible
You need to plug it in on
TVs.
your laptop.
They're like yellow.
We're gonna fix
That's why we
that.
gotta.
I thought they could have,
Nice.
yeah.
We have an RFP out.
Yeah, but didn't buy as much as you guys think.
You're right.
Never does.
I'll send it to Ken.
And I'm pretty sure that they're
I'm
not
working
getting
on
new TVs.
Is your
How
presentation?
many backseat drivers do you want?
The what?
Says your presentation at Paul on it? I see it now.
Recording in progress.
No, mute.
Oh, you better think again, little boy. I'll smash my setup in a second.
Screen.
We don't play like that. No.
screen. It only gives me the screen. It doesn't let me choose.
I'm the mom
like
that's
other
throwing
ones
my
that I
son's video game out in the middle of the road, so.
The whole console?
Oh, yeah.
Is
That's $400 less than I ever
What's
thought.
happening to this?
Didn't make that mistake again.
We're still on the record.
That's okay. I didn't injure nobody, just a piece of equipment.
Okay, ready. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Here we go. So yes, our mandated ethics and open meetings training. Here we go. All right, so starting point, always, public meetings. The city council is a public body under the law, under OPMA. You're required to conduct your business in the open unless there's an exception. So what is a meeting? Anyone remember from last year? What is a meeting?
3 or more.
Any
Okay,
more
gotta
than
have a
two of
quorum.
us, yeah.
The only reason.
You gotta have a quorum. You have to have all the ingredients.
You have to have a notice.
Quorum,
An
someone has to
agenda.
convene it.
Agenda.
You have to be coming together with the purpose of discussing, receiving public comments from or acting upon a matter. And then you have to have something you have jurisdiction over. So if all 6 of you got in a room and we're discussing, Australian laws,
That's okay.
wouldn't be a meeting, actually. You wouldn't have to, because you have no jurisdiction over it. Australia, nothing. There was some question, years back, are we convening an electronic meeting if like a staff member sends an email and people respond? We can't convene a meeting. I can't convene a meeting because I don't have the authority. The only ones with authority are the mayor and 2 or more council members. So we try to limit our discussion at that point, but just so it's not a meeting at that point. It could be if you have multiple council members engaging in the discussion at that point. So you have to stop it. But if I send an email to you all, that doesn't convene anything. Yeah,
I thought it was 3 or more.
that's quorum. Yeah.
Okay, but so two council members can convene a meeting?
Yeah, you could call a meeting.
Call a
2 of you. Yeah, you could convene it.
Oh, okay.
But it still
But there has
has
to
to
be
be
at least
properly
3 of us
noticed.
to have them.
Yeah, there's still noticing and stuff that we have to go through. But,
Okay.
yeah, and we don't do that. All right, social gatherings aren't meetings. So again, you could all get together and play pickleball or something. That'd be fine. It's not a meeting. And if you happen to run into each other at some sort of function, or maybe you're at Heritage Days or the Pumpkin Walk, and you all are talking to each other, some citizen will come up to you and say, you guys are having a meeting and this is an open meeting violation. It's not. It was just a chance meeting. But don't talk about city business.
Yeah, so you start talking about the road.
Yeah, and so you're like,
And then we all just disappear. The person's still standing there.
that wouldn't be okay. But it's, so if you happen to meet up, or even if you had a social thing, like, we have the Christmas lunch with employees, you're all there, you're all invited. That doesn't make it a public meeting, because it's a social gathering, not just discussing city business. We are required to provide notice of our meetings. We do so annually. We put out the notice of here are the expected meetings we'll be holding. You are allowed to have other meetings other than that. You just need to make sure you notice them properly. The baseline is 24 hours before the meeting. And the only thing that has to be published is the agenda. If an item is not on the agenda, then you can't talk about it. There's an exception in the law. If a citizen brings up a topic in public comment, then you can talk about it, but you can't take any sort of final action on it. And it's ultimately at the discretion of the mayor whether to allow that conversation to occur or not. But you definitely can't take action and say, okay, we're going to decide this tonight. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're going to fix it right now. You can't do that. It would need to be noticed on a public meeting. Our agendas need to be specific enough so that people know what you're talking about. You can't just say, we're going to talk about the city laws. It's got to be more specific, which is why on your agenda, you've got, very specific things. We're going to be talking about culinary water. We're talking about secondary water. If something's not listed on the agenda, then you can't take any sort of final action on it. We do provide packets in the city. It makes things much more efficient, I'm sure, for you. Could you imagine if you didn't have any prep coming into these meetings with all these kind of decisions? It would take you twice as long or 3 times as long to come to a decision. And then we provide that as a courtesy to the public, so they are also informed about what you're talking about. But if we don't put it out, that doesn't mean that we can't have the meeting. If the agenda was published, you can have the meeting. And some citizens might not understand that, and they may think the packet is mandated. It's not. So if something's missing from the packet, same thing. You can still talk about it as long as it was listed on that agenda. Now, how it generally works is the mayor will work with staff on a regular basis. Every week in our meetings, we talk about upcoming agenda items. And then the agenda is prepared based on, what we're seeing and what the needs of staff are. If you want to get something on the agenda, you can do that. This is in your rules. If you want to add something to an agenda, the first step that you should do is ask the mayor to add it. If he says, if he doesn't support that request for whatever reason, then you can always contact another council member and get their support. Once you have 2 council members that say we would like this on an agenda, then send an email to Cassie from the 2 of you and say we would like to get this on the agenda, and she'll get it noticed. It'll get on the agenda.
I have yet to not put one of your items on the agenda. So you can just try that.
Yeah, and that's the standard way. Talk to the mayor.
You're just very, you guys.
You can just ask.
Yeah,
Just
I
ask.
mean, it's that simple.
Just be aware with timing. So sometimes people want to throw things on the last second. This has happened in many cities over the years. You got, 2 council members and they go, hey, let's add this on. And it's Sunday night, and they contact the recorder and say, hey, put this on the agenda. It's not going to be in the packet. There will be no staff support for the item. And it's not that we don't support it. It's that we don't have time to do what we need to do to get the package together. Believe it or not, we actually try to gather information and present it in a usable fashion. So we generally are assembling our packets on the Wednesday through Friday before the meeting, really Thursday before the meeting. If you make a request for something before, within that time period, you're probably not going to have much packet support. And if it's after that period, you're definitely not going to have any packet support. So you might get a little staff memo that says, these council members asked for this item, ask them about it if you have any questions. That's pretty much all you get. And you'll like it. That's right.
And while this hasn't come up, let me just add in, while this hasn't come up yet, since I took over, it has come up in the past. And I think it's fair to say, if you bring something up and it kind of needs staff support, I think it would be fair to say, can we give it till the meeting that lets them support it if it's not time sensitive? Just throwing that out there. So if I ask you that, that's not me saying no, that's me saying, can we do that?
Yeah, and it's not that I'm laying down the law. I'm just saying we have other responsibilities and we can't always just drop
It's a
everything
logistical issue.
and work on it.
You could just say, you guys need to be considerate of us.
Yeah,
And we would
that's it.
understand.
That's what I was saying, but in a roundabout way.
Straightforward is best.
I was just kind of referring to the past. There were times when we tried to rush something in, and all we did was say, okay, well, let's discuss this again in the next meeting when we have time to get all the information that we didn't have time to do. It seemed like that was always the case. And this is, back in the really early days when I was there. So.
You guys should be comfortable saying that's not considerate of me. Okay?
Yeah, just please, yeah. And a lot of times these do require a little staff input, just based on this is what we went to school for and what our experience is for, and we want to help you make good decisions. So if you do, if it's required, please give us some additional time. Now, if it's something that's like, hey, we want to, have a resolution recognizing a certain day as a national or a city this day or something, that's not too much. Yeah, City Paul Roberts Day. That'd be great. That'd be fine. Just taking your staff input, you can just do it. Yeah. So if it's not a time sensitive issue, please request that at least more than a week in advance of whatever meeting you'd like to talk about it on, just as a courtesy to us. We would appreciate that. Council announcements. Now these are on the agendas on the business meetings, and want to make sure that we're clear what these are and what they are not. So this is set aside for you to make announcements. It's not really a free-for-all. So it's not like it's open mic time and you can kind of just say whatever was in your mind. It's really supposed to be a time to report to the council on your assignments, or if there's something coming up in the community, like, hey, there's going to be a concert, or there's going to be communities that care, or whatever it is, there's going to be a rodeo. This is the time to let us know about it.
Can I introduce new topics for discussion?
Yes, so you can raise potential future agenda items and ask that to be placed on the agenda. That's fine, because you're not discussing it, you're not deciding it, totally fine. But we shouldn't start talking about it. And there's always a temptation to say, I'd like to talk about this, and here's why. And then it's like, well, I have a question about that. And then the discussion ensues. So let's not do that. So really, yeah, brief explanation of the issue, and then we'll get it on the agenda. Okay, so we do keep audio recordings of all of our meetings. We're required to. Those are made public within 3 days after the meeting. If you happen to have someone who comes to the meeting and wants to record the meeting on their own, like with their phone or whatever, that's allowed. It's a little obnoxious, but it's allowed. So we can't stop it.
I do it all the time.
It's less obnoxious now that you mentioned that.
Well, it's plenty obnoxious for the other people. I don't care because it protects me, so do what you want to.
Okay, that's already not back up on the internet. So
Hey.
yours fails.
So yeah, there are exceptions. If you're on site, like you're visiting somewhere in the city, or you want to go visit some facility because you're thinking of building one of your own, you don't have to record that. But you can't decide if you can't go there and like do city business. So it's really just for a tour. Cassie keeps minutes, as you're aware. It has to have all these things. So date, time, place, names of people who give comment, substance of the comments. Just a note on concurrent discussions. We have some, the council rules. They do say that we should avoid engaging in private discourse or committing any other act, such as texting, which may tend to distract the attention of the council or the audience from the business before the council. So that's from your own rules. I would encourage you to, if you're having, and this is hard, especially in this work session, because it's very informal, and you're sitting by someone, and a little conversation might occur, like, hey, about this, and you got two things happening at once. It's really hard for the speaker. Maybe you've got someone presenting, or someone who's been recognized, by the mayor, and they're speaking. It's hard for them to talk when you got other people talking over you. It can be distracting. Also, the recording can get a little bit muddled. It can kind of just be like, and Cassie can't even tell what people are saying. So it's hard for her to take minutes if she can't tell what people are saying. And then, of course, those who are talking are usually not paying attention to what the other person's saying. So you can be missing something that the speaker's saying. So do what you can. If you catch yourself in a concurrent discussion, just put a stop to it.
That's when in the minutes it says the council engaged in a philosophical debate. So.
Well, that's also just me not wanting to take.
Yeah, it was like
totally get lost. This is a council waxing philosophical.
This is no cheating. That's another extra half an hour.
Also, maybe two council members are talking, and this would be really useful for the entire council to hear, but it's not being shared because the two of you have resolved your issue, and now the other ones didn't hear it. So it's important just to make sure that everyone is involved in those conversations. Texting your email. So state law says that you are allowed to email one another or text message one another. It's totally fine.
It's not a meeting.
Yep, don't do it in a public meeting, right? So that would be very bad. In the words of Egon. Please do not communicate with others electronically during the meeting. So if you have a constituent that is texting you and saying like, hey, you need to vote this way or that, or hey, this developer said this and I think this, you should not be listening to that, because it's not fair to the other council members. It's not fair to the applicant. You should be limiting your input during meetings to what is occurring during the meeting and not through an extraneous source. So please don't do that. Closed meetings, they are lawful. Some citizens hate them, but they are lawful. They're allowed. But why? So we can talk about several things. Strategies about sale or purchase or exchange of land, leasing real property. If we need to talk about an individual, either their character, their physical or mental health, or their competence, we can talk about that in closed sessions. If there's litigation pending, we can talk about that. If there's any security devices or personnel, we need to talk about those specific things. We can close the meeting for that also. Any sort of investigative proceedings, those can also be closed. Now, one thing you may not know is a criminal violation to knowingly violate the closed meeting provisions. So if you know that something is not allowed to be discussed and you go into a closed meeting to talk about that thing, then anyone who voted for it or abetted that would be potentially criminally liable for the offense. So take it seriously. It is important that we continue to walk the line that we've been walking so well. With closed meetings, similar to the regular agenda, you can request a particular topic as long as it qualifies into that statute. Advance notice is definitely necessary in that case because we need to determine whether it's eligible. We need to make sure that the closed meeting language is on the agenda, and then we need to make sure that if there's again staff support or something necessary to assist with that discussion, that they're present. You should make that request to the mayor. And again, like before, if he doesn't support that, then follow the same procedure. 2 council members would notify Cassie. And then, yeah, as long as the purpose of the closed meeting is on the posted agenda, and then entering the closed session is supported by the majority vote, then an item for closed meeting can be brought up during that closed meeting. As far as closed meeting records, these are audio recorded generally. There's 2 times where it's not. If you're talking about security systems or professional competence or character, then we don't record those. But everything all the other ones we do. We can generate minutes and reports, but we don't have to. Anything that is presented there, so recording or a transcript or anything that's considered in that closed session, the minutes would be considered a protected record under GRAMA. So that means that you wouldn't be able to share that. So if there's a report or a map or something that's shown to you, that is a protected document. It can't be shared with the public unless the council decides to do so, like as a body. The point of the closed meeting is we're supposed to have certain things kept confidential, and it protects the interests of the cities. Or also, it could affect someone's personal life. If you're talking about someone's physical health or their mental health, it's really not fair for that discussion to occur in the open, where that person's privacy is going to be invaded. Okay, so that concludes the open meeting section. Any questions on open meetings?
Just one comment, because supposedly one of these 516 bills that passed, we hope is signed into law very soon, comes with open and public meetings records and the ability to protect security information, because there are certain things that have been on public records in the past. This probably doesn't apply as much to the city as it might to Mosquito Abatement Board or Wasatch Integrated Waste, because like for the sewer board, we pushed a bill that said that we could keep anything deemed a security risk private. And it did get passed by the legislature, but I don't think that it's been signed yet. Because, for example, we have had to publish for years the exact location of hundreds of pounds of chlorine out of that plant, which could be used as an incendiary device. Or we've had to publish our security routes according to the old law, that how many people we had on staff for security. So apparently we now finally got that passed. And if that comes up, because you guys deal with chemicals too, if that comes up, that could be something to be aware of.
Similar to us, we have infrastructure too, chains, reservoirs.
Yeah, things that could be contaminated in a public
Police
health.
rotations.
Yeah. And before that wasn't protected, which I think is insane. You could grandma, security rotations. That's horrible.
All right, so moving on to the ethics discussion. There is a specific act in the Utah Code that governs all officers, including elected officials and also employees, each municipal officers and employees ethics act. If you violate some of these standards, depending on what you do, it could be a criminal offense. Sometimes it's not. When we take an oath of office, and all of you did take an oath, and I think most of the department heads do as well. I know I did when I became an attorney. We take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. So we have the responsibility to respect those that we interact with, even if we feel like they're less deserving or that they're taking advantage of a situation or something. It's on us as elected and public officials to respect the constitutional rights of the people we deal with. So citizens have property rights, they have privacy rights, applicants have due process rights. We don't have to say yes to them, but we do have to be sure that we respect those rights as we deal with them. That's really important. Under the Ethics Act, we're prohibited from using our office for personal benefit. So as an example, if I am I'm prosecuting cases for the city, but I'm also soliciting criminal defendants and trying to do an estate planning business on the side or something like that. That would be bad. I can't use that connection I have through the city to try and build like a personal benefit.
So I can't get bumped to the top of Neil Briggs' say list for this. Because I've been 3 years at the bottom of that wait list.
No.
Damn.
Good thing we had this training. I'm glad. we had this training.
That's all I needed it for. Poor Sam.
Yeah, so yeah, using your position to try and further your own personal economic interest or secure any special privileges for yourself or others. You're not supposed to do that. We're here to serve, not be served. The act prohibits also gifts of any gifts that might influence a person's decision if it's a reward for that action. That would include like a loan, or if you got some sort of special deal, or overcompensation for a service that you provided to someone. It also includes, money, of course. There are exclusions for campaign contributions. Reason for that, probably more of a First Amendment issue. If a person likes your policies, they can contribute to your campaign without it violating the act. Whether you accept that campaign contribution is up to you. If it's an actual loan, that's okay. And then if it's a non-pecuniary gift of less than $50, so like if it's a pen or a t-shirt or a hat or something like that, and it's just occasional, it's not money, then that's not an improper gift under the act. Whether you want to pick that or not, again, it's up to you. Or if there's an award for a service that is given publicly, that's also excluded.
If you win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, Nobel Peace Prize is fine, although that would be ethical, issue anyway. So conflicts of interest do come up, and that can include like if you operate a business within the city, or if you have a stake in a business that's operating here. You might have a personal interest, like a relative who is trying to, doing a land use application or something like that. If there's a conflict of interest there, you need to make sure you disclose those in writing. There's nothing in the Utah law that requires you to abstain from the discussion. But generally the expectation is that you will, if you have a pretty serious conflict. But as long as you've disclosed it in writing in advance, then you're okay to participate in the decision. You make these disclosures as soon as you're elected. And then when a conflict arises, then you make sure that you update your disclosures and submit that to the city. If the conflict changes, then that's another time. If you happen to be assisting someone with a business transaction, this doesn't happen very often, but it could be like if you were a realtor or if you were working for someone who had business with the city, then you would need to provide a sworn written disclosure to the mayor saying, I am getting compensated for this assistance. And then if you ever talk about it in the meeting and you're not abstaining, then you need to make sure that you disclose every time. By the way, in case anyone doesn't remember, I'm working for this person. And that needs to happen at least 10 days before either the transaction is complete or when you get paid. If you have a violation, if you see a violation, you think that someone's violating the ethics code, you can talk to that person. That's the first thing you could do. I think this is for a conflict of interest issue where it's not even a criminal kind of violation, but just I think you may have a conflict here you don't see. Sometimes we don't think we have a conflict of interest until someone points it out. And they say, hey, how would you like it if this were my situation? And the person says, oh yeah, I think maybe this is a conflict. So that'd be the first step I'd say is talk to your peer, if there's an issue there. If you do think that it's an ethics law violation, then you can enforce that through the proper channels. The worst place to do it would be like open meeting and just like throw out the accusation or just throw it out on social media or something. You want to refer that to the mayor and the mayor will investigate it. If you can also lodge a complaint against an elected official with this commission that exists through the state of Utah. It's an ethics commission that is able to consider these things. They have subpoena power. They make decisions. They render opinions that they submit to the governing body once they complete it. So you could do that. It's really unfair, and it leads to just really it hurts the city when you have just public accusations and people fighting back and forth. Also, there's often a difference between what is lawful and what you think is right. Really, the ethics law establishes a very low bar. It says you can't go below this. And you may have a higher bar as your personal ethics, and that's fine. But don't try and impose that on other people and say what you're doing is unlawful. And it's sometimes hard to draw that distinction, right? All right, so that is the end. Any discussions or
like the end, or the end of a section?
No, the end.
Oh,
like
okay.
it's gone.
Just want to make sure.
It's over.
That was quicker than I thought.
pretty good.
I talk fast.
I think I owe you $2.
I think you do too.
No technical difficulties.
I think actually that that was well done. It was new. It was not the same as before. Well done.
Shake it up. Sure.
I appreciate the extra effort. Okay, so I'm going to, I guess we have to adjourn from that meeting?
You can just, yeah.
Okay,
I know,
so we're
the work
gonna,
session's adjourned.
we're gonna call for, or we're gonna adjourn from the work session, but we do have to go to this special business meeting. So I'm going to call the special business meeting to order. And we're going to adopt the agenda, which is only one item, really, other than.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the item of consideration to adjourn into closed executive session for provisions. Now, in this particular case,
Don't close the door. No, don't close the door yet. Sorry. We're not in closed session yet.
yeah, we have to get there. Okay, in this particular case, I need a motion that includes personnel issues and property issues. So
moved.
okay. I need a seconder. That's going to second. Thank you, Seth, for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are moving to closed session.
Now close the door.
Now.
Just so.
Calm down there,
Sorry, but
Tiger.
there's